ask more questions than yesterday regarding the workflow. Now you're kind of familiar with the workflow. So I ask your advice when doing stuff. So be ready to use the chat box anytime. So first thing we will do here is we're going to populate a stadium. So I don't really have a stadium and I'm not really an artist, to be honest. So I'll go super quickly and probably just start with some plain geometry that I'm going to add an angle to it to make like a bench. So I invite you to create your kind of stadium geometry. Make sure that what we want to have at the end is a way to place characters. So we'll probably place them face based. So have a way to select the faces that you'd like to have on which you want your characters to be on it. It could be a round stadium if you want to. My advice will be, we've got two ways to tackle that. Either you do the full stadium now and put 80,000 of guys, and that will be a pain. Or what we do is we'll just make a sample, make it super great. And once we're good with that, we'll have the full stadium and put 80,000 of those sample guys. So let's start probably with just a bench. It can be a round bench if you want. That doesn't have any influence in the final layout of our characters, but what we want to have is really a way to be able to select faces or vertices or whatsoever. And we're going to place one character per face or per vertex. So go with your geometry the way you want to. I'll go super simple. I'll probably make my geo. Oh, and regarding scaling, here we're going to use the crowd man. So consider that one grid square is 1 meter. So when you make a stadium, think about this, think about what's the units of this, and make it, consistent to something. So I'll probably make it like a bit bigger, something like this. And what I want to have is one character per face. So I'll make in a face, I'll probably have like almost 400 of those. And I'm gonna, tilt that slightly to have kind of a bench and people being on almost stairs. Great. And also probably now is a good time to set my scene, save it, and put this into, so it's day 2, and that's my stadium bench. Okay, great. Yesterday, we haven't had the time to really spoke about terrain. It's true that, we haven't changed anything regarding terrain. My characters were evolving on a flat ground, and we didn't ask ourselves, what if we had some geometry? So probably now is a good time to make an actual terrain. So let's go back into the Golem shelf, and before creating an entity or whatsoever, what I'll do is select my geometry here, and if I check into the shelf here, I can see I'm having a blue plane. This is the 5th icon within the shelf, and if I hover it with the with my mouse, I've got something called terrain locator, create a terrain locator. So that makes sense. So you will take the selection I'm having right now within the viewport, and if I click on it, you'll see that now it creates a GLM environments group. And if I open that GLM environment, now I get a terrain node in my scene, and we can inspect that node quickly into the attribute editor. So we can see that we've got something called ground adaptation attributes. And that ground adaptation attributes tells me that the type of ground I'm having is a Maya geometry. So there's some meshes from Maya. And the geometry I'm using is called P-plane1. Probably also a good time to rename this like bench geo. The two nodes, they're mapped together. So if you change the names, it doesn't have any influence on the mapping. The update mode is static. Like most attributes within Golem, we consider that interaction with Maya are static, and because we can optimize the code and make it run faster. But if your terrain is going to be dynamic because you are on a destructible zone or whatsoever, you need to change this. And we've got something called navigation attributes, and we're going to play with those on Monday. This is when you want to have moving characters in your area. Here, all my characters in my stadium, they be placed somewhere. They're going to play motion, but they will not move amongst the other characters. If they were about to move amongst the other character, we'll probably need to have a nav mesh. But we'll speak about that on Monday, and that will be the topic of Monday. Great. So next step is creating, bringing my characters in. So how do I bring my characters in? Do you remember the name of that node we need to bring in? Or maybe the number of the icon within the shelf? How do I bring a Golem character? Entity node. Okay, some people are saying the two. I hope it's so. I hope it's not the second icon. Entity type, entity type, entity type node. That's correct. That's the right answer. Entity type node. It's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 icon within the shelf. If you were about to click that one here, the second one that opens the character maker. So we did use that one yesterday. That one is to convert the characters, but here what we're going to do is bring the characters we already converted. So we're going to use some already existing characters. So indeed, we're going to go and move ahead with the entity type nodes and bring the same character than yesterday, the casual moonlight. By the way, if for some reasons maybe you forgot to select the geo there, maybe you created your terrain node and you don't have any geometry here, we can map the two geometry together, the geometry and the terrain together, just by selecting the two of them. First the geo, as many meshes as you want to, then the terrain, and use the map button and you will map your geo here. Same if the terrain evolves and you need to bring more meshes and add more meshes for the characters to adapt to those meshes, you can just extend that terrain node with as many meshes as you want. Make sure that you only put geometry which we'll use for terrain adaptation. Don't put, I don't know, street lamps or traffic lights or stuff which are not used to make ground adaptation. Just put surfaces on which the character will put their feet in. The more geometry you provide, the more time you will take to compute the ground adaptation. So let's provide the minimal amount of geometry you need. So let's go. Let's move ahead, create your entity type. I'm gonna go from the character pack into the Golem sub directory in lowercase into the characters. I'm gonna use casual manlight. Once again, it's just because it's easier to play with. It's a light version of the casual man with less meshes. So I'm gonna bring that in. It will ask me for the shaders, same than yesterday. We do not store the shaders within our home characters. So depending on the rendering engine you are using, you need to take the same character with the right extension. If you're using Arnold, here we're using Casual Manlight, so it's going to be one of those files, those 5 files here. If you're using Arnold, take the AR file. If you're using Renderman Studio, take RIS, Redshift RS, and V-Ray, the VR1. So here I'm going to use Arnold. So I'm bring that guy in. And when that guy is in the middle of the scene, he holds all the shaders and we're good. Also probably now is also a good time to rename that entity type. So entity type, let's rename this like man character. Great, excellent. So next step is, so we're creating our types, but maybe we can, we could have bring more type of character. We could have bring the woman type of character. If we had some kids in the stadium, we'll bring kids as well. If you got different behaviors to assign, you bring another character. So you can create as many as you want. When we'll do the battle scene, we'll create probably 4 or 5 different types, like weapons, opponents, and that kind of stuff. Right now within the stadium, we'll just stick with one. I may create another one later. If we got time, we'll see. Okay, next, we want to populate that scene, right? We want to add characters into that scene. So what's the tool we should use for that? Or what's the number of the icon in the shelf we should use, knowing that this one apparently was 6. So I've got the bubble. Yeah, correct, the bubble, the spray. Yeah, it's called the population tool. I've got all good here, all good answers. So true, we're going to use the pop tool. Remember, the pop tool is a tool. So if you click once, you'll just create a grid. And this is not exactly what we'd like, because we've been creating some faces on purpose. And for now, I can totally see that my faces are way too big for my crowd. I may fix that. I may fix that now, actually. So let me fix my geometry here, get something a bit denser. Okay, not so bad. So here with the grid, we could align that, but if some of you did a round, around stadium stuff, well, that's going to be a pain to put a grid on a rounded surface. So I'm going to remove that pop tool. I will not be able to use it. So let's see if amongst the options, so it's a tool. So like any tool within Maya, if you want to see the options, you need to double click on it. So let's see if there's something else which could be more convenient. So apparently you got plenty of different settings. What would you guys be inspired with? So you apparently have 2 lines. You can hover each of those, see what will be great. So one people is providing the blue curve. So let's see what it tells. So the blue curve tells it creates particle around the selected curves. So we could use that one, but that means we'll have to create some curve like Bezier curve or any curve from Maya. So it's an option, but here it's true that I have a mesh and I'm not really good with, creating nodes into Maya. So it could be one preference. It's not going to be mine. Second one, blue planes. So let's see that one here. So second blue plane. So here it tells select particle in the selected mesh. So that one looks okay. So let me try that one to see if that's okay. Maybe it's not the correct solution. So well, you can follow if you want, but let's see. If I click this, well, the first thing is I need to have a selection because it's based on selection. So let's select and let's create this. And now I've got a zone which looks like it's following everything, but it's not especially, following my face distribution. And so it's also an option. You can totally go that way if you want. But here, what I really want to have is have a per face control. So not exactly what I need. So I'm gonna delete that pop tool. And I think I've seen, well, obviously there's many of you and you guys propose different solutions. So I've seen the right solution somewhere. So let's see what else do we have. And the one I'm interested in with is that one here. So it's a blue plane, but you can see that the vertices component there are appear in yellow. If we hover the icon with the mouse here, it tells that we can create particles on selected object or components. So components in Maya means that you can select stuff like components of your meshes. Components can be edges, vertices, faces, and from that selection, each face, vertex, edge you select can be turned into a position for my characters. So if I want to make a face-based placement for my characters, what I can do is do this option here. So let's go into face mode in Maya. Which one is this? It's F12, right? Oh, okay. So you don't want me to select faces in Maya. Sorry about that. Damn. So I need to reopen, and I just want to move hide floating meeting control to relaunch Maya. Oh, that was brutal. Anyway, what you can do in the meantime while I do restart my scene is you can select your faces. And once your selection is active, you can try clicking on that button. And if everything goes well, you probably will see your slots floating on the faces. So you notice if you've been doing a slope like I did, you will notice that the slots are not especially following the slope. No problem with that. As soon as they're just above it, it's totally fine. Character ground adaptation will be processed and you'll have nice fit adaptation on your slope. So no problem with that. So I'll let you go ahead while, great, I can see for some people it works. So that's great news. And if I'm lucky, it even saved maybe a temp version of the scene. So that's great. Okay, good. And I probably rename and saves the scene as my stadium bench. So what's the shortcut for face? It's for face selection. It's not that one here. It's UV selection, that one. So if F11, thank you so much. I can, I can remove some of the faces if there's some area of my stadium I don't want to have characters on. I can totally adapt my selection here, which is something we couldn't really do with the previous modes. And I can go into the pop tool here and create a place on selection. Great. So not so bad, but from someone who dream about crowds, there's something which is kind of disturbing me here. They're all like fully lined and fully columned. So it's totally a grid. And even if it's a stadium and people are sitting on their seat, which are in super regular places, I'm not really happy with that. So I would like to, make it more organic. What should I change? And what node or what attribute should I take into? So I can see distance. Distance will change the distance between the characters, but here, if I change the distance, they will just expand. So my whole crowd will expand. That will be bigger than the bench. Some people are proposing to change orientation. That's correct. We can totally change orientation noise, distance noise. So those are totally right approach. So let's see if we can change the noise. If we look into this, we can see that the noise is totally grayed out, so there's no control. So actually the answer was also changing the distance, because you can see it's just an UI optimization. Here we figured distance is 0 between the characters because they place per face. If we want to have access to the noise, we just need to put a non-zero value here. And now we can touch the noise. So it's a stadium, so people are sitting still. So we cannot really, move them that much, but we can probably provide a bit of noise to have something more organic here and there. So I could see that someone was saying earlier that he couldn't fulfill this. So let me go through this again. So here, what I want to do is first select my component. So here I've selected faces, but that works with edges, vertices or whatsoever. So first I select my components on my mesh. Then I go into the population tool. I'm going to open the option. So I'm going to click twice in the shelf. And the mode I'm going to pick is going to be the component mode placement. So it's the one with the blue square and the vertices being yellowed on it. So apply on it. And now I'm having my characters being displayed as a grid. And within my pop tool, I can edit on the shape, the different attributes. So I'm going to add a distance and provide some noise. Okay, great. Excellent. So also something which can be handy, and you don't have to do that like right now for you if you don't want, but there's just a tips. Here, when you do, the full stadium stuff, you'll have characters. Let's say the soccer game or whatever the game. Here, the field is here, and obviously you'll have characters all around. So for sure, you can take every single mesh separately, and you can create your population tool for each of those. But that's going to be a pain to change the orientation and to have it all facing the same direction, right? So what we can do is change orientation, but orientation will just change the full crowd into the same direction. So it's not exactly what we want, because if we've got another bench on the opposite side, they will be affected with the same orientation. So that's not exactly what we need. So what we need here is to make them look at the positions here and the orientation. We want them to look at all the same position. So what you can do is use here, you can see within the orientation attributes of the population tool, you've got a look at, and that look at can be connected to a locator. So I can go into Maya, create a locator. So this is my locator here. And the same way than before, if you select your locator first, then you select your population tool and you map those two together. Now you can see that all the slots of my population tool, they are following that locator. So it means that if I move that locator, I can see that all the characters are facing towards the locator I've been placing. So it's, if you decide to populate your stadiums, one time with one big population tool, that's a way to have all the characters facing the right direction. Great. Okay. So if you're not able to make a face on face assignment of your pop tool, you can just create a grid for the moment. No problem, and you'll be able to check the video again later to see exactly maybe what you missed. You can just click on your mesh, change the size of the grid, change the distance between your characters, put some noise, and have something which fulfill you. So for sure, I can re-show the locator. So I'm going to remove it. So let's say you want to have orientation assignment, so the characters all look into the same position. I can create a locator in Maya. So a locator is just, it's just a dummy node, which is not rendered, which is not a geometry. It's just a utility node to assign a position to it. It's used for rigging and that kind of stuff. And in Golem, we're just using to specify a position which can be keyframed. So you can go into Maya, create locator, and the locator is just a cross that you can set up into your environment. You can move it wherever you want to. So I'm going to place it here. And that locator is a new node into the outliner. So what you can do is first select the locator. It's always the same way. You always select the stuff you want to connect to Golem first, all the stuff you want to connect. And then you select your Golem node. So here I select the locator, I press Control. So I'm able to keep my selection, get my population tool selected. And now I can go into the look at section and map it together. So now my population tool all faces that locator I've been specifying. Great. So next is we need to, so if I rewind that simulation and I play it, well, I can see any characters. What's going on? What did I miss? Here we go. Well, you guys remembered that well, so that's great. True, you need to create. Exactly, I haven't created the particle, and that's correct. And if at any time you don't know exactly what's going on, but you can't remember, you're missing a step, you can still open the scene checker, and the scene checker will tell you, is there at least one particle system in your scene? And the answer is no. And is there at least one connected crowd into your scene? And the answer is no. So roger that. And indeed, on the population locator, we need to create that population. That locator can be used for many things, actually. It can be used to create targets when we do position assignment and character locomotion. So that tool is not always used to make placement. It's often used to make placement, but not only. So if you want to create a placement out of it, it's really up to you to say it, that you want to create something out of it. So true, if we want to have a crowd, we need to go here into the population tool and press create. As soon as we do that, now we'll go back into something we're used to. We've got the bounding box of the crowd, and at the middle of the scene, now you've got that orange character, which tells you that now you've got a crowd simulation in your scene. So that's great. And if I run my sim now, yay, I've got my first stadium crowd. They're a bit scattered here. I can see that the density is not as good as I wanted to, but yeah, I'm not an artist, and that gives you a good examples. But whatever, at the end, what I really want to have is, make that crowd really nice, and I'm gonna relay out that crowd later. We've spoke about the layout tool yesterday, where we could duplicate characters and place them wherever we want to. We've got some super fancy tool to populate a stadium in just a snap, so we're probably going to take advantage of do so. I don't really care, to be honest, about how does my placement looks like. I really want to make my behaviors looking really nice right now. Great. So far so good. So we've got our first crowd. The entities there get assigned with some geometry. We'll probably change this later. So let's see how we move forward. So now what we want to do is assign some behaviors to my crowds. So I want them to do something. So if we want to assign some behaviors, we're going to use the behavior editor. Let's save the scene just in case Maya doesn't like. So I'm going to open the behavior editor, and I'm going to assign some actions to my characters. So first, if you remember, you get that gray space, which tells you need to open a crowd entity type from the behavior outliner to get the party started. So let's follow that rule. We'll double click on the entity type to open that space. Right now, my entity doesn't do anything. This is why if I play the simulation, nothing happens, is because I haven't assigned them with any action. So what I would like to do to my characters is I would like to assign them with some couple of motion clips. So which behavior should I assign to my crowds? So I've got a library of behaviors. So which icon, maybe the number of the icon, I should assign to my characters. So I've got some people I'm saying locomotion, number 3. I can see flag guy. Motion, locomotion, motion if I'm not gonna move. Well, we can see there's some trained people here already. They sneaked into the academy, but they already know how to use Golaem properly. You sneakers. Yeah, I've seen the right answer. It's motion behavior here. We want to assign to our characters. So locomotion, it's not completely a false answer, but we'll see, especially on Monday, that that behavior does way more than just playing a motion clip, and is more tricky to set. Here, if we just want to have, some motions being played on characters, we can stay simple, and we can stick with the third one. So I know that in terms of design, those two icons are really close to each other. There's one guy walking, and then there's one guy walking with the green arrow. And I know that even if I really stress you the difference, I know some of you will make the mistake. So please, please, please take the third one, the motion behavior. Do not take the locomotion. We'll use the locomotion on Monday and when we'll do battles. But here, when we do stadiums, just base cycles here. Okay, so let's drag and drop a motion behavior, the third icon from that outliner, library rather, and let's put that into the flow. Great. Are we good now? Should I just throw the sim and enjoy my stadium stuff? No. Add cycles. Load animations. Yeah, that's correct. True. And if you forgot about it, yeah, here you've got the error message. You can just select the behavior which has the forbidden sign on it, which tells you there are no motion files in that behavior, and that's correct. And true, the right shortcut to add motions is double click. And you know what? Let's say you don't want to double click on it. I'll just want to show you another way because we haven't dived into the motion behavior yesterday. So I can select the motion behavior if I want to, and I can also see its attribute here on the right side. And I can see I've got a panel which is open, which is called motion attributes. So apparently there's some options to specify some motions here. I can change the start frame. I can change the speed. So what I could do is, but it's going to be really, cumbersome to do, tiring to do, is I can create motion clip entries. Let's say I've got 3 animations. I can create motion clip entries. And for every single motion clip, I can go there, load a file, and pick a file. So, well, you figured this is why I like to use the double click here. And but that's just, if you need to replace one of the animation you loaded on the character, or in a behavior, or if you need to maybe do a pipeline around this and have automatic tools, this is what happened behind the hood. It's creating motion clip entries and loading a motion clip here. But true, we're going to double click on this. And from the character pack, we're going to pick some animations. So if you go into, once again, the character pack 739 into the Golaem lowercase subdirectory, there's a motion directory, which has an audience subdirectory. And if we open that audience, so audience, like the name tells, is like when people are watching or listening to something, it's an audience, which is not really moving. So it's going to be standing people applauding, shouting, being angry, being happy, looking at the game, making a Mexican wave. So there are plenty of clips which come from a motion capture. And we're going to open that. that audience stuff. And you know what? I want to actually, okay, let's follow the lead here. And what we'll do is I want to have some sitting people and some standing people, but I want to be able to control exactly how many of those guys will sit and how many of those guys will stand, right? So what I'll do is in this behavior here, we'll just pick sitting people. So we've got a couple of sit animation. We've got sit angry, sit applause in rhythm, sit watching, and we've got waves. We do not take the waves first. What we'll do is just maybe pick those 5 clips. I don't want to have the angry nor the applause. So what I'll do is just sit watching here. So sit watching 1, sit watching 2, and you'll be good. So yeah, just, well, do whatever you want to, by the way, but let's take some sitting animations from that behavior, because I want to show you some behavior editor tricks. So I'm just loading those 2 clips here into my behavior. And what I'll do is I'm gonna remove those clips which are empty. And now I'm having my sit watching 1 and sit watching 2. And if we run the simulation, as we expect, we've got characters sitting, so that's great. But you can totally spot they're playing the same animation, right? They're totally in sync all together. They're all about to make the same motion, so not really realistic, right? So we'll need to tweak a couple of stuff. What we can tweak, for example, is the start frame. We could, like, here the motions, they're a couple of hundreds of frames long. So it would be great if we can just pick a random frame for every single character. So within the motion behavior, if you don't have it into your attribute editor, you can just open the behavior editor here, select it. And when you are in that interface, you can see that there's another panel you can play with, which is the start person attribute. So start person means that you can pick between the start of the motion or the end of the motion, the start of the motion being 0, the end of the motion being 1. You can pick where you want your start frame to start from. You can see that the min and the max, they're set to 0, which means all the character will start from the start of the motion, which in some situation is a good case. But here in our situation, it's not right. So what I want to do is I want to tweak this and bump the maximum value to 1. So my characters will be able to pick any frame to start, and they'll all be, having a different timing. And now I'm having, even if they're playing 2 different animations, I'm having more diversity on my characters. Okay, so that's one thing. Second thing we could do is probably we can mirror those animations. Those animations, they're not completely symmetric. So we could say, you know what, I want to maybe play one motion clip, but also the mirrored version of that motion clip. So I can go back onto my motion clips here above, and you've got plenty of icons next to it. You've got that green dot, which tells you if the motion clip is enabled or disabled. Sometimes you don't want to delete it, but you want to remove it from the behavior to see how does that other clip looks like, or what happens if I remove that one, but you want to maybe change your mind later. So you can enable, disable it. You can delete it with the trash icon for sure. But then you got that weird orange kind of circle. And if I hover it, I can see there's a question which asks me, should the animation be mirrored? So if I click once on it, you see that now that orange circle is reversed. So that means now you're not playing the original motion, you're playing the mirrored motion. So you replace one animation by another, but you don't have the 2 scenarios together. You have just the mirrored version. If I click again, now I've got a full orange icon, which means I'm loading both the original motion and the mirrored version. So I can do that on both my clips. And obviously, if I click once again, I go back to my original state. And now I'm having, instead of having only 2 clips, I'm having 4 clips, 2 and the mirrored version of them. And if I rerun my simulation, now I should get some people looking on the left and some people looking on the right because I'm having the mirrored version of it. What else could we change? We can also change the speed ratio. So how fast a motion clip needs to be replayed. And for some cycles, you can actually like slow them down or speed them up without breaking the actual dynamic of the motion. So obviously it's better if into your motion capture, you can make plenty of capture. So, and you've got great diversity, but let's say you don't have that chance or that budget, you can just, trick the human eye by just changing those different procedural parameters. So I'll go into the speed ratio attributes. And you can see that the speed ratio, mean and max, so how fast the motion goes, is 1. So it's the original speed. And what we can do is probably like lower that value, the mean value, to 0.9 and 1.1. There are actually some couple of SIGGRAPH papers which tells that if you change the speed of a motion by 10% up or down, you could not feel the change of dynamics. So we can take this away and use this for our own requirements. And let's launch the simulation again. And now we've got some characters playing the motions 10% faster or 10% slower than the others. And we're not so bad. Well, you know what? I'm kind of annoyed by the density of my crowd, so I'd like to change this, if you don't mind. So if I want to change my density of my crowd, and maybe that's a tip you can use as well a bit later. So I've got two options. Either I can go into my plane and I can put more polygons, or what I can tell here is probably I can put, rather than putting just one guy per square, what I could do is probably I could put 4 guys per square. I could put like 2 rows and columns per face of my actual stadium. So I can go into my pop tools and you can see here I'm having a number of columns and rows control, which is set to 1, 1. And it means that per component, we're setting 1, 1 grid within it. So what I can do is I can say, okay, I want to have a 2, 2 instead. And I'm going to pump my number of crowd to something like this. So now you can see I'm having 2 by 2 pieces of characters within my faces. And I can just reduce the number to make sure that I don't have characters all along. And if I want to replace my crowd, I need to press the replace button here. And the behaviors will be assigned to that characters. And that's a bit better. Great. Okay. Let's move forward. Are we still good? You guys have sitting characters and they're playing different start frames. And I think I've lost the, yes. Okay, that's good news. I think I've lost the question and answer panels. So let me see if I can grab it again. I think it's escape. Here we go. Okay, nothing has happened, so that's great. Okay, let's move forward. So let's probably rename that behavior. It's a good thing to be, as a 3D artist, it's always good to name your nodes properly. So we'll go into motion here, and what I'm gonna say is this is the sit behavior, so sit animation. So I just renamed this sit. Great. Yeah, I can see your selection com stuff error. I know exactly where to remove this. This is not indeed a Golaem error. This is a Maya error. But yeah, this yeah, Alex, as Alexander told you, if you Google this, you can see what's going on and how to remove this. I think it's a Python stuff problem. Great, we're having a sit animation. So here, what I want to do is I want to have maybe 2/3 of my crowd being seated, and I want to have 1/3 of my crowd standing, like they're super excited people. So what I'll do here is I'll bring another behavior. So it's going to be another behavior to play different motion clips. So what we'll do is we're going to bring another motion behavior, and probably it's a tricky question, but where do I plug this? Where do I put it? You can have crazy guesses. Some people are saying after the seat. And well, you know what? The thing is, we haven't really spoke about how those behaviors get analyzed. So it's really a tricky question, and I don't expect you to have the answer, but let's see if some people are mentioning the parallel. So not so bad. Oh, okay. And there's actually, yeah, there are actually a couple of right answers. I'm not sure if you guys already used the software before, if it's just a guess, but you're actually correct. Some people propose to make another branch. So it's true that we probably need to have another branch. So some people were, a lot of you guys were actually proposing to put this in parallel. So let me probably provide and introduce operators. So what we've been playing with is behaviors. Well, we've been playing with just one, right? We're just been playing with the motion behavior, but there are plenty of those. And obviously with those behaviors, you probably need to make some logics within your graph. So you probably need to define some conditions under which one behavior should be picked and not the other one. So for that kind of operation, we've got something called the behavior operators. And if you pay attention, you also have the triggers and also trigger operators, which are slightly different from the behavior operator. So the parallel operator is it's actually that guy here. So don't do this now, because this is not the way we're going to do. So some people propose to use the parallel. So one way to got the parallel appearing is to drag and drop two behaviors in the same spot. And if I release when I'm here, it'll create the parallel for me. So let me just rename that behavior so it's proper to, and we're going to call that stand. So if we do this, it means that at the same time, we're going to play that behavior and that behavior. So it means that characters will play a sit animation, but at the same time, they play a stand animation. And maybe we can try. And don't worry, we'll go through this all together again. So I'll bring a stand watching animation here. So we've got a stand and seat. And if I play this on my characters, I've got something pretty wacky. You've got actually what you ask for. You're asking your characters to stand and to sit. So they're right in the middle of those two situations here. They're stand, sitting, kind of. So we're just blending those two motion with the same weight. And you're right in between. So playing in parallel is not, it's a really sporty assembly. It's true. So going parallel is not exactly the way we want to go. What we want to go is rather like branching. Some guys decide to take one branch, which is standing. Some guys decide to take some other branch, which is sitting. So let's see how we can create a branch. So I'll go back into the same state you guys are in. So you are into this state here. Let me remove and clean my scene slightly. Okay, so this is the situation you're in. So what we'll do is we'll create a motion behavior. So drag and drop it and put it into, the void. Let's put it black and fancy, and we'll create connections later. We're gonna name that node properly. So we're gonna name this stand crowd. Great. Oops, I actually killed my sit behavior. So this is the state you were in. Ah, no, damn, I deleted it. Shame on me. Never mind. So I'll let you do it while I'm doing it at the same time. So I'm gonna reset my sit behavior. So here we go. Sit behavior. Okay, the clips, they're already here. So let's bring the clips. It's sit watching, and that one here. We want to mirror those. Change the speed ratio slightly and change the start frame. Great. And we want to load a stand animation. Let's rename this properly too. Stand. Great. And let's load a clip because we want that behavior to play a motion clip. So the one I've been loading earlier, so we got stand watching, which is kind of a really neutral standing animation, which is fine. And probably stand applause. So what we'll do is we'll just select the two of them. So I just select those two behaviors and open into this. If you forgot how you disconnect a node, the shortcut is select your node, press Alt key on your keyboard, and move that behavior. And as soon as Alt is pressed, what you do is unlink the behavior from the flow. If you release the Alt key and you drag and drop a behavior on a flow and you release, it will be snapped to it automatically. So if by accident you put your stand here, let's remove it. If you put it here, let's remove it. If you put it there, let's remove it. That parallel here, even if it's standing around one behavior, not a problem. But let's keep it, separate for now. So we want to take advantage of a new operator we haven't seen yet. So some people were specifying if, and it's totally a valid approach. So if is an operator which allows you to make some branch based on conditions, and you can totally make the use case we're trying to do. But there's one which is a bit simpler to use. It's the RND. So RND stands for random. So you're going to randomly branch into multiple decisions. So I'm going to put that guy, and where do I put it? Do I put it like here? Do I put it like after? Do I put it like in between? Do I put it like on the same spot than the rest? And fatal error, right, trying to detach alt. But sorry about that. So yeah, before it's the right answer. Yeah, before in the first branch, parallel at the left. Yeah, that's all correct. Indeed, you remember that well from yesterday. That flow here evaluates from left to right. So the decision by picking one behavior or the other is something you need to do from the beginning or before you actually reach those behaviors. So you put your random here, and from that random, you can use the middle click to create a connection. So from the random to the behavior, if you don't have a middle click on your mouse, you can also enable the link mode here in the above icon here. And what you'll do with the left click, anything you'll do with the left click for now will be a connection. But if you don't want to, if you got a mouse, middle click and drag from the source node to the destination node. And we need to close that graph. We need to say to that graph that once that behavior has ended, what happens. So we need to close that graph and make sure that we also make an arrow which bring us to the end of that behavior flow. So now you've got a random which is picking either the set or the stand animation, and once those behaviors are done, they're gonna exit. So I'll do this once again. So this is the state we were in. You were into the set behavior mode. So we're bringing a new motion behavior, which is the stand motion behavior, in which we load a stand animation. We're going to bring a random operator from that panel here. We're going to put it before. So we're going to make a decision before the motion actually starts. And with the middle click, we're going to make a connection from the random to the stand, from the stand to the end of the graph. And now we've got a choice for the characters to pick with. Let's try. Let's save maybe first. And let's try what happens. So, okay, that's great. So now we've got standing characters all playing the same posture at the same time, and sitting characters playing different postures. And by the look of it, I'll say that there's probably half of the characters being seated and half of the characters being standed. So we want to change that that assignment. So let's see how we can do that. Oh, and by the way, they're all playing the same postures when they're standing. So probably now is a good idea to go into the stand animation and do the same tweaks we've been doing so far, which is, so we did free stuff. can anyone remind what are the free tricks we used to create variation almost for free? S1, S2 is free. Yeah, that's correct. So mirror, speed, and start and speed and mirroring. Yeah, great. You're pretty good students. I'm doing, I'm teaching in schools a lot, and you're pretty above the average student I'm having. So that's great. Start percent ratio, mirror, speed ratio. So yeah, that's all correct. So we can go into our stand behavior here. We're gonna enable the mirroring by going back into the orange spheres. We're gonna change the start percent by changing the max value to 1. So we'll have the full range of frames to get started with. And we'll slightly slow down the speed ratio and augment speed ratio mean and max. We're going to change the bounds to have more diversity, and now we should get something more organic. That's better. Great, excellent. So let's move forward and see how we can change the weighting of this. So right now I'm having half of my crowd being standing, half of my crowd being seated. I want to change that weight. So once again, like when we select the behaviors, we've got behavior option. When you select operators, you've got operators option. So that random node we've been creating and using so far, it has actually also some attributes. And by the way, here we just have 2 outputs, but you can have as many outputs as you want. And any output that you'll add will just be another choice for the characters to go through. So if I select the random, I can see I've got some weights which are assigned to the sit and a weight which is assigned to the stand. So let's say we want to have twice more people sitting. I'll just change my weight here and put it to a value of 2. And it doesn't have to, sum to some certain value. What we'll just do is normalization of the weights. So if I just putting 2, 3, 4, whatever, I'll have 3 times more people sitting than people standing. In here, I can see that compared to before, I just have few people standing into my crowd. So not so bad. And you know what? It's been 1 hour we've been running this. So now it's a good time to save your scene. It's 7:01. So let's take a break. And let's meet again in 5 minutes exactly. So it's 7:02 here right now. So let's meet again at 7:07. And if you've got questions in the meantime, probably fill the question and answer box within it. Okay, it's already 7:09. Sorry about that. I tried to edit the pop tool face selection, but each time it had a new pop tool. Yeah, it's not a problem. You can have as many pop tools as you want to. I could see these questions popping multiple times. So with the approach we're having here, the design and the layout is not really important. The way the characters are placed is not important because we're gonna re-snap the characters afterwards. But let's say, you know, maybe you change your geometry and you want to start again. I don't know, maybe the geometry is bigger. So let's scale that a bit. And obviously here, the characters are not aligned anymore because the pop tool only use the selection once. So what I can do is usually what I'll do is just I delete the previous pop tool, or I just ignore it, or I just hide it. So let's delete it. I can stick with the previous particles, no problem with that. And I'll go into my selection mode, F11, and I'll just create another pop tool from that. I'm gonna re-specify some of the options. Some people in some studios have way to replicate options from one pop tool to the other. But not a big deal. And we're going to increase the distance between those, noise this a bit, align that to the locator, but really whatever, because this is really not the final layout. And here, let's say I want to replace the previous particles. You can see that I'm having a create button. If I use that create button, now I'll have twice the number of characters because I still have that previous particle system still in my scene. So what I want to do is from that pop tool, I want to say that rather than creating a new one, I want to replace the previous particle system that I had. So I can just use the replace button. And now my previous particle, they kind of relocated and my characters get assigned properly. So, but really not a big deal because we'll change this later, the layout here. We're just making a really nice sample of the crowds and we'll see later how we can handle that properly. Great. Okay, next step here, I'm having like an ambient crowd, which is super nice. And now what I want to do is I want to add a Mexican wave into my crowd here. So I have like, I'll have a zone, like a polygon, and I'll keyframe it, which will go under the plane, under the bench. And when my characters enter that polygon zone, my characters will react to it and will play a different motion, right? So first thing first is we're gonna add that new behavior. So let's add once again the same behavior we've been playing with so far, so the third one. And we're gonna drag and drop it into a blank space. And we're going to rename it right away, wave. Great. And okay, another tricky question here is what I want to do here is I want only the character which are sitting. I just want them only to wave. I consider that the guys which are already standing, they're standing, so they don't really care about waving. They're already into the waving position. So I just want those guys to wave, right? So where do I put that wave behavior? Okay. After the sit, after the sit, after the sit, after the sit. Okay, let's see if we can do that. I kind of like that approach. This is not how I would do it, but and I'll show you. Let me think about it. Yeah, okay, I'll show you. You know what? I'll do it. No need to do it right now, and I'll try to explain what it would not be my actual choice here, right? But it's pretty valid, to be honest. So let's stick with me. I'll just consider you guys are in that state. Don't change it. I'll just do the experiment for you, right? So here, the wave, let's put it after the sit. And let's bring first an animation. So I have come a couple of sit wave animation. So let's use one of those. I can maybe load multiple, but whatever. And what I'll do is I want to put this after the wave, right? So what I'll have is sit, wave, and out, and keep playing the wave. So this is, so it's completely like a valid design, but how do I go back to sitting once I've waved? Because the wave is kind of like an event that will happen here and there, and I want to go back. So indeed, some people are suggesting I use the loop, and that's totally a valid approach, and we can totally do that. If we do that, how many triggers will I have to set? Okay, you know what? It's actually valid. I'll just to show you how I would do it myself, and also that will be a good opportunity to show you some options we haven't played with. But you know what? It's actually valid, and if some people want to test this after the sessions, that should work properly. So some people are suggesting we are using the loop, so we can, you know, make them loop back to the sit. So I can. The way, if you want to do it yourself, I'll let you do that after the session. So you want to put those two behaviors into the loops, so you can do something like this. So put the set, put the wave afterwards, and put the loop. You'll have to set triggers, and we'll trigger this properly later. But that's totally a valid design, and actually it's pretty fine. I never did it like this, but it will totally work. So let me show you how I would do it, and how I usually do it. How I usually do it, and I know this is tricky because I just told you right before that it was not a valid approach. And let's do it together now. So if you haven't done it yet, into your wave behavior, let's load a motion. So let's double click on it. Let's pick the sit wave animation. And I'll let you do that. And once you've done that, should we apply the mirror on it? On that wave animation? Wow. People are saying no, but they can tell it's a trap, right? The fact that I'm asking the question is kind of helping into what you should answer. So if we want to actually, so the best is to check how does the motion looks like. So if you want to see how a motion clip looks like, when you select a behavior, you can see the list of clips, and each clips you can see it's kind of its own separate node. So let's go into the wave. Let's select the wave behavior. Let's go into the motion clip. Let's select the arrow here, which will open the motion clip node. We can see some stuff data like where is that file, how many frame it has, what's the frame rate, what's the translation within that motion, etc. We've got some information, and we can edit that stuff here. So, and we also have a preview button, which when we open it, shows, so you've got a mini viewport where you can just turn the character around with the left click. You cannot zoom or out. It's centered on a motion, and you can see exactly what's going on. So you can pause the auto replay, and we can check the motion. And okay, it's not really obvious here, but that motion starts like when you're doing a wave. What you do is you look in one direction. When is the wave coming? And when it's coming for you, you're kind of recentering your head, raising your arms, and you're looking at, do the people next to you are following that wave? So if we mirror the animation, we'll have some people looking at the opposite way of the wave. Even if they raise their arms and it's pretty symmetric, they're going to look at the wave from the other side. So mirroring here, not especially a good idea, right? Okay, next question. Should we change the start frame of that animation? Should we say we can start anytime into that motion clip? No, no, yes, slightly, no or slightly. Slightly, no, yes, I don't think so. Yeah, you know what? No or slightly is a pretty good answer. So if we say yes, it means that the motion can start anytime. So you may start the motion when the character sits back. And if you start that motion when the character sits back, you have a sit back animation, then someone looking for the wave when it has passed already a long time before, and rising up. So no or slightly is the right answer because that motion here has a couple of frames, not so many, like 6, 7 frame at the beginning where it is kind of starting to stand. So probably not too much changing the stop percent. Should we change the speed ratio? So answer no, yes, no, yes, little bit, same, not really, slightly. I've got them all. Um, yeah, but I would change it slightly. Some people just rise faster than others because they're younger and more, more active, and some people are just more lazy. Yeah, correct. Because some people are slow. So yeah, some people have some terrible rhythm, so that's a great opportunity to put some mirror there. It really depends on the kind of crowd you want to do. If you want to, once again, if you want to reopen that preview button for the motion clip, here I click the first on the behavior I wanted to load the motion from. So it's within the wave. Then I click on the small arrow. So that small arrow is kind of a shortcut in the Golaem UI to bring you to the node which is connected. So it means that it's going to open the motion clip for you. You've got the motion clip, and you've got within the attributes a preview button here. And that preview button allows you to bring that down. If you want to have another shortcut, from the outliner of your behaviors, you have a behavior mode, a motion clip mode, and a triggers mode. And within the motion clip, you've got all the motion clip you are using. The orange one, they are not using any of your behaviors. That italic gray one is using a behavior, but that behavior is not active, which is the situation of a wave. And the white ones are clips which are used right now. So you can select the motion you want to preview and click on the preview button here, and you have your motion appearing here once again. Sit wave. Great. Okay, so let's change those options. So we said mirror, no. Start frame, well, let's set it to 0. It's only 5 frames, so we'll have to compute a percent. So let's stick with that. Speed ratio, yes, we can maybe add and remove 10% to it. Great. Okay, so where do I put this? And I know I just told you like 10 or 20 minutes before that it's not the right way, but I'm gonna put this here. So what I'll do here is I'm drag and drop my wave behavior, and I'm gonna release it on the sit. So if I do this and I release, it creates for me automatically the parallel operator. So now I'm having a sit animation and a wave animation playing at the same time. So this is not exactly what we want, but I'll show you exactly what we want to use that mode instead. So let's see. If I run the sim, let's see what I get. I've got my sitting people who are like all playing that Mexican wave and looping among it, and you can see it's kind of wacky on the legs. They're not really raising their arms. They're really like should be standing and raising their arms, so they're not exactly doing what we need here, right? So let's change the different options. So first thing we want to do is we want that wave behavior. So just if in case of people missed what I did, this is probably the situation you're in. You've got the sit, stand, 2 options you can pick. You've got your wave, which has a wave motion clip, and you just drag and drop this here and release it. And now you've got sit and wave. So what we'll do is we're going to say to that behavior, as soon as you are running, you are taking full control of the posture. What's happening right now here is that the two behaviors are running at the same time with the same weight. So Golaem is just blending the two motions, and you have half of the posture, which is computed from the sit, and half of the posture, which is computed from the wave. So that's not exactly what we need. So what we need to do is say, okay, that motion here, that wave motion, when it runs, and when it runs is really important because we're going to change this. When it runs, it takes full control of the posture. So this is what we'll do here. We'll go into the wave behavior, and amongst the different attributes we're having, we've got something called blending attributes, and the blending attributes has a submenu called priority and weight. So this is where we'll be able to tell Golaem that this motion here has a higher priority than the rest. So when it runs, it has more control. So the way I see this is like my sit animation is like an idle animation. This is what's played in the background when nothing happens. And when something happens, those motions have more priority and they take control on top of the sit. When I'm doing this way rather than sequencing the two behaviors like you guys propose, because let's say here it's a wave, but let's say I want to make a goal event. Well, that will complexify your graph way more because you'll have to put some if conditions and some loops around and here and there. And if you got like a lose reaction, once again, you have to add more controllers. So the whole idea is you stack up all your behaviors on top of each other. It's kind of a video game approach. You consider that you've got an idle animation, and on top there's some couple of events which will trigger different behaviors, and you keep your graph pretty clean and easy to deal with. So just my approach here, and that makes the graph more flexible in the future if you got more behaviors coming your way. So that's just my take on this situation here. So okay, let's bring more priority to the wave. So let's select the wave here. Let's go into the blending attributes, priority and weight. And what we'll do is all the behaviors have got a priority of 2. And just by increasing the priority to something more than 2 makes that behavior more important than the rest. Here, it's relative priorities. So we're just saying when that behavior runs, it is more important. So I just put 3, 4, 5, whatever the value, as soon as it's above 2. Let's see how that looks now. So if everything goes according to the plan, now you've got your Mexican wave looping and looping again, and you don't see that sit animation anymore. So that idle animation that we had, we don't see it anymore. So what do we need to do now? Because here, obviously, we don't have that animation to cycle. So what do we need to set on that behavior so it only starts when we need it? So I've got some answers coming my way. Trigger mesh, trigger polygon zone, time controller, trigger, activate when we want, if condition, space controller. What's a space controller? I like the sound of this. Polygon trigger. Yeah, that's the word I'm looking for. I'm looking for triggers. This is exactly the scenario we want. So we want to trigger that behavior at a specific moment. So that specific moment can be driven by anything. So let's say it's a goal on your in your game, something's happening. You want to have, I don't know, there's the soccer ball, which is within the net of the opposite camp. You want your characters to make the victory animation. So this is the kind of events you want to deal with. And here it's a Mexican wave, so it's kind of located into time and geometry. So we're going to make a zone, like a plane. We're going to put above or beyond the characters, and we're going to animate this. And we're going to use that plane animation to control when does that animation should start. So let's create my plane trigger. I'm gonna save the scene first. I'm gonna create a polygon. Let's scale it so it's long enough to cover my bench. Great. And here and there. Okay, let's make it also maybe a bit large, not too large, but a bit large. And we're going to keyframe it so it goes beyond my bench. So we don't really care about the timing. You'll be able to change the timing as many times as you want. And the behaviors will react to it every time. So it will be fully dynamically responding to that. So, okay, I'm great with this. Let's put a keyframe at frame 1. Probably a keyframe at frame, I don't know, 125. And let's make a way back later. So let's put it frame 250. I'm kind of lazy, so I just wanted to come back at some point and go back here again. So what I have is I have it going through once. Okay, it's not exactly what I need. I want my characters. Well, you know what? I'm not really a great animator, so that I'm gonna stick with that anyway. So it goes like below the guys for 3 times, but I only want to filter when you go into the left to right direction. So I'm gonna skip when it comes below them. And that will be also a great occasion to introduce something more. Great. Okay, so let's save that scene for now. So by now, I expect you to have make a geometry. If you're having multi-layer stadium, you can also make boxes of volumes to say only which part of the crowd you'd like to react to the wave. Maybe sometimes you don't want all the different steps or a floor of your stadium to react. So you can use a box and use the 3D volume polygon zone. So let's do this. We're gonna select the polygon zone trigger. And what we want to do is change a trigger. So which trigger we want to change? So we've got 6 triggers. We've got the start trigger of the wave, the stop trigger of the wave. We've got the start of the seat, the stop of the seat. We've got the start of the stand, the stop of the stand. Which one should we connect the polygon zone to? So start of wave, start of wave, start of wave, stop of wave, wave. And you don't take too much risk. You just say wave and you're kind of sure to have the right answer. Start of wave, wave start, wave start. Yeah, all good. True, we want to start the wave when that polygon comes into us. So we're gonna select the start trigger of the wave. So it's on the left side of it. We double click on this and that opens for us the trigger panel, which is set to true by default. And we're going to bring, like yesterday we did, we'll bring a polygon zone trigger. So that's the third one, which looks like a plane. So I'm going to drag and drop this into the space here. And don't forget to right click it. And once again, make sure you select the start wave trigger. And you can see here the name of the tab you open is wave start trigger shape. Up, drag and drop the wave trigger, the polygon zone trigger. I'm having a message which tells me that I'm frozen. Am I frozen, guys? Or you can still see and hear me? No, okay, I'm good. Great. Okay, I'm good. Okay. Sorry, I was kind of puzzled to see this. Okay, so yeah, drag and drop a polygon zone wave, and now we need to connect the polygon into it. So same shortcut than yesterday. First, select the plane, select all the geometry you need to take into account. Then, while the selection is still active here, press Shift. Shift allows you to keep the trigger zone keep the polygon being selected, and also select the polygon at the same time. So you've got your zone now being selected, you've got your trigger being selected, and you can map those two together. And as soon as you map them, you can see your polygon here now belongs to the trigger zone. And probably we can rename this like max wave jail. Great. So I'll just show you the operation again. So what I did is I didn't have the trigger editor being open. So what I did is I went onto the wave behavior, onto the start trigger. I double click on it. So it opens for me the trigger editor. Then I had that true default trigger, which always tells the behavior they should start. So we're going to change this. So we're going to bring a polygon zone trigger, set it as root. So now it's that new trigger, which will be evaluated. And now we need to bring the polygon within it. So I'm going to select my geometry first. Then I'm going to press Shift. So it allows me to have still my selection here and my trigger, and I'm going to connect the two together. And if, let's save, if everything goes well, let's check. We've got character setting, and as soon as the wave comes in, I've got my wave being applied on my characters, and they keep waving. And they keep waving. They kind of ignore the mesh now. So what are they? Oh, let me redo that phrase. Why are they still running that wave behavior? What's happening? They're not sitting back. Huge drops in FPS. Yes, true. You know what? Because we're asking Maya to evaluate the position. So this is why it's a drop here. We're asking Maya to return position and do recasts. Yeah, we need to specify the stop trigger, and I can also see like an option with I can also see like someone and some people are noticing that here I haven't checked that polygons are deformable. Yesterday I kind of said that if your polygons are animated, you need to check that box. I have to check the documentation, but I kind of mismatch something here. If you change the transforms of your node, that's fine. If you deform the geometry, so you animate the vertices, this is not something we will be updated with. So you need to check that box. But here, as the plane, as a transform animated, actually we're fine. So sorry about that. You don't need to add this. So I can see the answer here and there. We have to set the stop trigger. So it's correct. We need to also set the stop trigger. So what's happening here is maybe we can follow, a character. Where I can click on a character here. Can I? I need to go back into the component mode. I think I'm still in face mode. Yeah, great. Let's take a sitting guy. So if we play the simulation from here, maybe first frame, we can see it's playing the sit animation. And in terms of behaviors, we can see it picked the sit branch. So that's great. We can see here that behavior is green, which means that behavior is running currently, and it's having some influence on the posture. And we can see that behavior is blue, so it means that for some reason it has not started. And for some reason it has not started means that here the start trigger, the condition is not fulfilled, right? So what we can do is run a couple of more frames, see when does that behavior start. And you'll see that at some point when the zone comes by my character here, now that behavior starts, we can see that now the wave animation takes control and it plays the wave animation. And the thing is, I'll play the simulation the rest of the frame, but you notice that that behavior still run. It has more priority. So it takes priority above the rest of the animation. So they still play that wave stuff. So it's correct. We need to stop that wave animation at some point. We need to set the stop trigger for that. Great. So let's change the stop trigger. So let's see why it doesn't stop. What's the value of it? So we're going to go into the wave. And here this time, rather than changing the start, which is on the left, we're going to change the stop, which is on the right. So we're going to double click and it will open another tab here below. And we can see the default value for the stop trigger is set to false, which means my behavior never ever stop. So we need to change this. So maybe next question for you is here you've got 13 triggers. What should I use to stop a motion once it has played once? Some people are saying nothing is green. I missed something, I think. You need to select one character in the viewport. If you don't select anything, you don't get the debug mode being enabled. If you select a character, you've got the debug mode, both in terms of that small window which shows you the posture, and also within the behaviors there. And you probably need to run a couple of frames. Oh, no, that guy is actually in green, but he's standing, so he's playing the stand branch. So you just, click on guys to see what's going on for those guys. So yeah, I've seen the answers as I was explaining. Some people mentioned frame, distance to plane. Well, you know what? Distance to plane is quite valid too, but it means that your geometry needs to be scaled really properly with the right white, which corresponds to the timing of the motion. So that's actually correct, but maybe not flexible enough, I'd say. Some people mention motion time or behavior time. So those are actually great options. So behavior time is great, but it means that you need to know exactly how long your motion is. Motion time will know the motion for you. So let's maybe jump into those two behaviors, those two triggers, the behavior time and the motion tab. So once again, here I'm in the wave stop trigger. So I'm not into the start, I'm within the stop. And you actually have two triggers which have a clock next to it. So we've got behavior time. So behavior time here, let's look at the options. It tells you, so you can just stop after seconds. So you some value at seconds and some frames. So it means that you need to know exactly how many frames your motion is. And if you assign multiple motions to a behavior, right now we just have one motion, but if you have multiple motions which have different, length in terms of timing, that will not work properly. So what you can do is we've got a dedicated trigger for that. So we're not going to use behavior time, we're going to use motion time. So it's the second one where you can see the walking character, the same one than the motion behavior, with a clock next to it. And what we'll do is we'll just drag and drop that motion time trigger. Once again, don't forget to set it as root so it becomes active. And here we can see that in addition to seconds and frame, we've got percent. So it tells you at which percent of the animation you want to stop that animation. So if we want to say once it's played once, I'm just going to say, okay, 100%. Once the motion has been played for 100% of its time, whatever the length, how many frames, whatever, stop it. So again, I've been using the motion time trigger. It's the walking character with the clock next to it. I drag and drop it on the wave stop trigger. Make sure that you're not putting it elsewhere because we really want to stop the wave. I right click on it to set it as root, and I set it to 100% to say I want to stop the motion once it's been played once. And now I can run my simulation again. Probably I can check one guy. I can check him as soon as the plane goes in. I can see the wave animation starts. The wave is 200 frames. He will play that wave animation for here, almost 200 frames. And then you can see that that motion stopped. We cannot see the wave anymore. And my characters are not waving anymore. Great. So problem is they're not waving anymore. That's my actual problem. Here you may have noticed that the geometry came by again my wave. So not this time here, but here they're sitting and the plane will come again and they are not waving. So why is that? Any guess? Yeah, plenty of right guesses. Need to loop the wave behavior, need to loop, and it's correct. So it's something like people really have problem to catch at the first sight. Like the Golem graph here, it's really like you have to see it like an electricity graph, kind of. So, you know, like electricity starts from here, and every time there's a switch, it's a switch we tell, okay, you're able to go through that behavior, you're able to go out that behavior, etc., etc., etc. And what happens here is that here the signal went through that door. At some point when the plane comes by, it said, okay, you can get in. And at some point when you play the motion once, you can get out, but nothing tells the signal to go back here and go reevaluate that trigger here. So if you want that wave to be evaluated multiple times into your shot, it's true you need to bring a loop operator. So that loop operator we were playing with earlier, now we can bring it, and we can't really like put it like here. I don't think it's possible. Yeah, okay. It's not really possible to bring it, you know, right around the wave. So you need to make it in 2 times. First, you put it into the parallel. So you just drag it above any of the behaviors and it will be headed into the parallel. And with the Alt key, you can just move away the wave and put it into the loop. So no problem if you don't do it right away. It's just, I just want to show you that you can loop your stuff properly. I can see a question which asking, mine goes back to sit animation after wave. It's not really a question, by the way. If you're not sure what's going on, if there are characters that are not doing something which is expected, click on them, ask, check what's going on here, which behavior I played, why is it played, why emotion is not started or stopped. Change and check your triggers until you figure what's the right stuff. Also notice that the clip, the wave clip, is not only a wave, it's a sit, then the character wave, then the character sit back. So you may sometimes think that they're playing a sit animation where they're actually playing that part of the sit which belongs to the wave clip. So click on the guy to make sure that you're following exactly what's going on. Could you show us the stop trigger parameters you put in? For sure. The wave trigger, I just put a behavior time. So it's that guy here, walking character with the clock. And I put 100%, which means I want to play the motion for 100%. So if you're asking the motion to play at 50%, it means that it will stop after, 100 frames, and maybe the character will be like hanging his arm. So Golem will make smooth interpolations between those clips, but you're never sure exactly what's going on if we do the transitions for you, where if you got a motion which bring them back to a sit, it's way more realistic and way more dynamic. No problem if you guys didn't catch, the loop, you can still review the stuff. As soon as you got like kind of Mexican wave, we're good. There's maybe last thing we want to do in terms of behaviors on that scene, which is, let's say amongst the sit people, there's some lazy one, right? Not 100% of them will rise. So I don't want all of the sit people to wave. What should I tweak? Do I tweak a behavior? Do I change a trigger? If I change a trigger, which one do I change? What would you guys will do? So someone is asking to maybe change the R&D. So if we do the R&D, probably like adding a new R&D, would that work? That would work. You know what? That would work. That's actually a right option. You can have like a empty choice where you can go through. Use operators. So yeah, through the R&D, probably it's a right way. And this is not exactly what I wanted to go through, but it's actually a valid option. And why it's more like a philosophy of, would you like to put this into your behavior design and make it more complex, or would you like to put this into your trigger design and make it more complex? So it's really up to you in the philosophy you want to go through. Select the ones you don't want and remove them from the wave. If only it was that simple. Can we put a rand on priority? You can, but if you change the priority, you'll go back to a blending. What I really wanted to do was maybe influencing the triggers. So here, that wave animation, finally it starts when the polygon zone comes by my character. So what if we add more conditions? So we can actually add more conditions, and that will be a good chance to introduce more triggers and also triggers operators we haven't seen yet. So what we'll want to do is to change the wave shape starting trigger. So we can go into the wave shape, and on the left part of the wave shape, we can select the start trigger, and we should come back to my polygon zone. So we've got, all that huge space that we're not really using because we're just put one node into this. Couldn't we just add more nodes? And if we want to add another node, which one would like to add? Let's say I just want to have 50% of my people waving. So some people are proposing the fade. The fade would make all of them rise at some point, but not at the same time. But they will all rise at some point. So fade is just a matter of delaying when it's going to happen, but it's going to happen for sure. I can see some people are saying paint, totally valid approach. You can totally have and paint will provide you artistic control on which one or which zone of the stadium you don't want to rise, and totally valid. But if you really want to have something more organic, like I want 50% of my crowd, I've seen the answer plenty of times, random trigger is the right way to go. So using the dice. So the random trigger here, we're going to bring it in. So we're going to drag it, and we're going to change the attributes. So right now it says 0% of the crowd will return true. So this is not exactly what we want. We want to have 50% of them. So let's type 50%. And super, super, super important is we want to uncheck the is dynamic. So if is dynamic is checked, it means that frame 1, we're going to pick 50% of the crowd. If dynamic is checked, frame 2, we're going to take another 50% of the crowd. Frame 3, we're going to take another 50% of the crowd. So it means that it's going to accumulate percentage within time. So if I want 50% of my crowd straight to be picked and nothing else, I want to uncheck the dynamic. So it means that first, when the simulation starts, Golem will pick 50% of the crowd and will say, okay, if you guys at some point need to trigger something, this is you, and that's it. And that doesn't change. That distribution doesn't change. So I want to uncheck this. And so it's 50% not dynamic. And I want to combine this with my zone. So to combine this, I've got my operator. So I've got multiple operators. I've got AND operator. I've got an OR, exclusive OR. I've got a NOT or an accumulator. So if you guys have been doing electricity or Boolean logics, that's probably familiar to you. So which one should I use? And I can see the answers starting to pop. So I've got and. Oh, you can all agree on that, right? And you're all sure about this? I'm trying to put some doubt into this, but it's no. No, you were actually correct, guys. Sorry, that was just me joking around. So true, we want to check if the two conditions are fulfilled at the same time. We want to check, are you in the zone and are you part of the 50%? If we do or, it means that we'll check, are you in the zone, or you're not in the zone, but you're part of the 50%, so you can raise. So it means that you'll have 50% of the crowd, even if they're not next to the trigger, they will start rising there, playing the Mexican wave. So that's not exactly what you want. And it's true, you want to have an end. So you want to check that the two conditions at the same time are true. So I'm going to put that guy here and on the right, and I'm going to create a connection from the 2D zone trigger to the end and from the random to the end. So I'm making like a a more complex decision, like I want to be in the zone and I want to be into my 50%. And if you do this, now you'll have the characters, and I can see a completely valid approach as well. You can see some characters here, they're not standing at all. They're just sitting and they just don't care about the game and whatever happens. And okay, I can see another approach which was pretty valid too, which is, can we just put the dice as a root and go from the zone to the random? So it's totally valid too and totally works, and that will also avoid you to create an end door. Another option will be, first you check you are in the zone, then you check if you are in the random, and that works. Totally valid, actually. You're correct. But here I wanted to, just for the purpose of the exercise, I wanted to show operators, and that was just a good opportunity to show operators. Great. So slight maybe last thing I want to do with my behaviors, and we'll switch to something else after. We'll do some close. Is we were suggesting that there are some really bad rhythm people, who are kind of delaying the wave, and they're not starting to wave at the same time than everybody else. So what we should do to delay some of the people, when the polygon comes by, they're not like rising straight away, because here you can, let's go back to maybe a higher percentage, like a 75. Here we can see that when the zone comes by, all the characters from the row, they're all like rising at the same time, and really it's not really organic, and it's not really, it's not really great. So what should we use to delay this? So I can see the answer, but which is just sent to me. So you guys can't get inspired by this. Fade, can't we manage that with the layout? Yeah, that's correct. You can totally do that with the layout if you want to. But I try to achieve as much as I can without too much trouble with simulation. And I kind of prefer to tweak this later, all the more artistical approach later with the layout. But you can totally do that with the layout if you want. Fade, behavior time. Behavior time, let me think about this. Yeah, behavior time will work, but we don't have a min-max random choice for behavior time. So it means that it will delay the people, but it will delay all the people at the same time. So we don't have as much control as the fade trigger that we used yesterday too. So we're going to bring, once again, a fade one. It's pretty, I like to use that trigger a lot because it's the one who's bringing you, organic results for free. So I tend to really put it almost everywhere to have really more human kind of behaviors. So I'm going to bring the fade trigger, and once again, I'm going to put it afterwards. So first I want to check if you guys are belonging to the polygon zone and to the 75%. And I want to fade that afterwards. So yeah, casual settings for the fade. I'll put, I don't know, maybe 100 frames here. We've used that one yesterday, so I won't go into too much detail. So I'm going to say, okay, my people can fade between 1 and 100 frame. At the beginning, there's not too much people starting to start that behavior. And at the end, I want all of them to be at least raised. And now if I run the sim, I should get a bit more delayed. My character, they're not exactly rising at the same time. There's even one guy which is totally late compared to the other. I kind of totally missed this stuff. And not so bad. Great. So I can see there's a questions. It could be great to have color-coded info on the start or end point of a node to know that there is a trigger or not associated to them. Is there already? So let me think about it. Like, okay, if it's a non-default trigger, like put kind of data on it, it's, you know what, it's actually a pretty good idea. I'll write this down. Or Alex, if you're still around, can you write that down as a maybe feature request? I like the sound of it. Merci. So what's available on the other hand is color coding when the behavior starts. So no need to also do it on your side, but I just want to show you that what I can do is I can remove the texture of my characters to rather see how they look in terms of behaviors. And on my crowd field, I can enable color visual feedback. So it means that now my characters, I'll see which behavior they're playing. So they're sitting, I can see they're starting to wave. So you have just a way to, rather than clicking on the character, you can see what's going on. You can see the characters which are green are the guys which have not started the wave behavior. So you can follow what's going on here onto your characters with a visual way. So I just achieved this by turning off textures, because by default we show you the texture of the character, because most of the time this is what you want to see when you got your director or art director next to you. So I just bumped the entity color weight, and within the node which is handling the particle system, I enable color visual feedback, and each behavior has a color. So here I can see the wave, for example, it has some visual feedback attributes, and the wave is actually yellow, but I can say, you know what, I want to wave red. And next time you throw the sum, you've got blue and green characters, and as soon as they wave, they turn red. So just a quick way to also see what's going on in terms of behaviors onto your characters. Okay, so now it's 8 p.m. Such a great timing. This is exactly what I wanted to do in the time I had. Did you guys have a Mexican wave on your side? A Mexican wave which is starting with zone and ending with motion time. It's a great yes, so that's good. Most of you, I don't see any no, so that's awesome. Excellent. So yeah, 8 p.m. I propose we make a 15-minute break and come back, and we're going to speak about close, making a flag simulation. And we'll also lay out and render that heavy crowd. So yeah, let's meet at 8:15 then. And if you got questions, guys, put it into the question and answers panel. If it's in the chat box, we may miss that. Again, sorry, I went late on my dinner. I haven't even finished it. Okay, sorry about that. There were some people who were asking um, how I get the color. So, well, that was just, just some trick to show you, but nothing necessarily you wanted to apply on your crowd. But if you're just interested to know more about this feature, so what happens is on your side, what we do is we display, the crowds as a texture characters. And the reason for that is because most of the time when you got your director next to you, you want to actually see how the characters looks like. But you can see those slots here, they're green, so it means the character belong to some colors. You can see that node here is green. So what you can do is go into your entity type, the type of characters you'd like to show the shaders on. So here I'm on the man character, and you can push the display color weight to 100%, so 1. 1 means that rather than showing the actual texture of the character, will show the behavior colors. So that's one thing. Now you should get green people all the way. And if you want to enable behavior coloring, the node which is handling this is within the population. It's a node we haven't really spoke about. It's called the crowd field. The reason this node exists is because Golem relies on particles, but obviously we don't want all particles of the scene to be turned into a crowd entity. So we've got a field. So this is the name Maya nodes have when they are assigned to particles, which turn particles which are connected to it as a field, as a crowd and as entities. So when you go into that crowd field stuff node, if you check the different attributes, there's nothing really you should touch into this, except if you know exactly what you're doing. But there's just one checkbox here at the end, which is called enable color visual feedback. So if you check that box, it means that you'll have visual feedback. So visual feedback means the feedback from the simulation being displayed into your simulation. So if you check this, rewind, play a couple of frames, as soon as the behavior starts, it will color the crowd. Obviously, sometimes we've got multiple behaviors starting at the same time. So it's only the last one was applied, which applies its color on it. So that's more advanced. It's something more fancy to debug your scene. So let's go back to the previous state. So nothing really important here. So I can see there's an open questions. Let me just go back to where I was. Okay, great. One question which is actually interesting is I realized that it's the same guy who are doing the Mexican wave in the first pass than the one who are doing it into the second pass of the wave. So can we have some guys doing the first Mexican wave and then another group of guys doing the second wave? It's an interesting question, and the fact that here, so what's happening is, as said here, that 75% they computed from the start of the simulation. So we've got some optimization going on, to make things go faster, because we do crowds and every single computer step is important to us. So we decide 75% of the crowd, first frame, they're here. And anytime you go back into that trigger is fully reproducible. So it means that if you want to have another group of people, you probably need to do another group of trigger. And will that work? Yeah, you can make another group of trigger. You can remake like a 2D zone polygon. And well, you know what? I'm not even sure how I would do that. So that means that's quite complicated. So if I actually had to do it, and it's really, more advanced, what I'll do is probably I'll make another wave behavior next to that one. So I'll make one wave behavior, put another one here, redo something like this with that trigger system. So when that behavior goes out, we'll reevaluate another kind of trigger. There's probably a way to do it by combining those guys together. but I'm not sure. And it would be pretty complicated to do to make sure that the first iteration is here, the second iteration is there. So I'll probably, just to make it simpler, I'll probably make 2 Mexican waves. But it's really like an hypothetical case. You know, when you do crowds, and especially when you do stadiums, they're in the back, they're out of focus. You don't see them. You never see twice the same wave within the stadium. But you never have the time to see 2 times a wave within the stadiums. And if you do, nobody really spots that is the same guys who raised the first time and the second time. So I guess it's more like an hypothetical question. It's a hard word to say, sorry. So yeah, that will be my take. Possible, but just fancy stuff to add, right? If the trigger plane pass quickly, doesn't that have an impact in the simulation? I mean, don't work well, so it is better to do it slow. Well, if it has, well, the thing is, evaluation happens every frame. So if in less than 1 frame, your polygons go through here to there, if when we compute intersection between the two, we can't find an intersection, the characters will never raise. So the speed has an influence for sure. And you want to make sure that at least the characters gets evaluated at some point within that plane. You can use, like in every simulation software, you can use sub-steps if you want to have more computation, but that's not something you do really with Zone. So just slow down your polygon. You use sub-steps when you do physics because you really want to have great collisions. If you know, if you do something else, nothing really important. Can we use black and white textures? Sure, we've got a texture trigger as well. So it's more stuff you have to dip into yourself. And you've got the weekend. If you're curious about it, there's plenty of tutorials. We've been doing live sessions last year. You can dive into the documentation to see what are doing the other triggers and how they can be used and so on and so forth. Great. Let's move forward and let's add flag simulations to that scene, right? So as I said earlier, really the layout we are using is not really important. The fact that those guys are scattered this way is not something really important here. So we could do flags into another positions, let's say. We're not even having to, you know, bring those characters in. So what I'll do is I'll probably make another type of people here in the scene and animate flags on them. So just a quick optimization we can do is for now, I may want to disable that crowd. So if you want to disable that crowd, you can go into the crowd field here. So which is the node which is handling that particle system, and that particle system corresponds to those characters here. You can go into its general attributes and just uncheck enable. So the next time you throw simulation, now you don't have anything happening anymore. The characters are not instantiated. They do not react to the zone. They're not here anymore because we just disabled that crowd field, right? So, okay, let's make another bunch of crowds which will have a completely different behaviors because they will be raising their arms and having some close simulation on the flag they have. So I'll create another type. This is the first time we will have 2 types in our scene, right? So let's create another type the same way than before. So we're gonna bring the entity type node once again. He will ask us to select a character, and once again we're gonna select the same character. So there are some situations where you need to bring 2 times the same character because you're gonna apply a different geometry on it. You're gonna apply different behaviors. You want to set up, yeah, a completely different scenario on those guys. So I'm gonna bring the casual man underscore light once again. And as we already loaded the shaders for that guy, we shouldn't get prompt anymore with anything else. So now we've got a green type of characters, and we've got a blue type of characters, which has not been renamed yet. So let's rename that. We're gonna call that guy flag man character. So we've got man character, flag man character, 2 different types. And it means that now within the behavior editor, if you check the outliner, we've got the man character type and the flag man character type. And if we double click on those blue guys, we end up with a blank space of behaviors. We'll be able to bring behaviors into this. So let's play with this. First, I need to populate my scene and bring some of those characters in. So maybe also we can introduce another population mode. Let's take let's play with that one here. So we're gonna make a plane once again in your scene. Up. Let's make a plane, put it here, let's say, and this is gonna be the zone. So just make it the right size to be able to include, I don't know, 40 people in it. So it's just the zone in which we're gonna populate the characters in. So I'm gonna rename this flag plane geo. And from the population tool, I'll select the geometry first. I open the population tool by double clicking into this. And we use the grid. We use that one which was populating on a selection of components. So let's use that one here, which is now the blue plane without the yellow dots. And if I click on it while I have a polygon selection in the scene, I should get a new population tool appearing, which is covering my actual zone. Notice that that population tool here, that mode here is dynamic, which means that the previous one was not dynamic. If we change the geometry, it was not following that change. Here, if we decide to change the geometry for some reason, like my polyplane, if I want to increase the size, I can see that the locator is following as well. Is it? It looks like a refresh issue somehow. Let's go back into that guy. No, okay, it doesn't want to follow this. So well, it's supposed to. So I look this as a bug report. So sorry. Never mind. So select your zone. Select that mode here, the blue mode here, and now you should get your plane being recovered with that zone. And we'll be able to control how many characters we want to put this in. So let's put, I don't know, maybe 40 or 50 people there. So let's go to 50 people. Let's change the distance between those guys, and let's noise this position, maybe more. You know what, let's put 100 guys. I've got some space I can put into. And maybe something you've noticed that compared to before is now we have green positions and blue positions. So it means that now that population zone knows about the two types of characters I'm having in my scene. And right now it's mixing the two within the same zone. So obviously into any pop tool, I can remove or add characters, and I can change the weighting of how many I want of each of those. So remember the green guys, they're the stadium regular people making the Mexican wave in some occasion. And the blue guys, there will be the flag characters. So we'll just put them elsewhere, and we're going to populate our scene elsewhere with those guys. So from that zone here, we just want to populate blue guys. So I can go into my population tool. So here it's the blue one. So as a reminder here within the, the outliner, you can just select the population tool, which is the same color than within the UI. And within the different attributes, there's plenty of panels. You can see the population tool is pretty dense in terms of attributes. There's plenty of those, and I'll let you play with some of them if you want to. But there's one panel which I'm interested in, especially, which is called Entity Types Group Attributes. So that one is closed by default, but let's open it. And as soon as we open it, we can see that we've got our two types of characters, the regular guys being green, and the other guys, flag guys being blue. They've got weight associated to each of them. And I can either remove that green guy if I want. So the man car shape, I can remove it. And now I've got blue characters all the way. Or I can just turn that weight to 0. And now I just have full blue slots here. So it means that I'm going to populate that scene with only the blue characters, the flag characters. So once again, you can delete it. As soon as you delete it, you are able to select into the dropdown and rebring that characters in, and now you can move that down. It's true the number of columns and rows are grayed out. We don't care about the number of columns and rows into that tool. This is grayed out on my side too. What you need to do is to change the number of position because this is not a grid. The number of columns only apply when you do a grid population tool. So this is why it's grayed out. You can just bump the number and the character will just occupy the space they have available to each of them. So, okay, great. So just slight stuff before we do create. So we've been changing the weight of the characters here, put that to 0. So we only sure to populate flag people. Here, one small stuff is here, if I press create, you'll notice that those guys will be created into a new particle system, which is great, but they will be attached to the same crowd field that were just disabled. So if we were able to create this, a character will not appear in the scene because we disabled those guys from the scene. So this is not exactly what we want. And also we want to keep them separated into another simulation. So we're going to change those attributes, and you can just here go into the crowd field drop down, go into new. So make sure you got new particle system, new crowd field. So it means that now you're making another simulation completely separate from the previous one, and you'll be able to control that and cache it differently from the previous one. So new, press create, and now you end up with a new particle system, particle 2, which is blue, and a new crowd field, which will be handling those characters. And if I go back to frame 1 and I run the sim, now I should get a crowd here, but no crowds below because beyond, because we've been disabling that other simulation. We've got 2 simulations, the crowd field 1, the crowd field 2. Each of them has their pop tool, each of them are their particles. So let me redo that operation again in case you missed any step. So what I did is I selected the geo, go into the pop tool, then I asked to create a generation zone, which is based on the mesh geometry, which will follow the mesh contour. Great. Then I just bump the number of characters I have. So I put maybe 110 or 150, whatever, something like this. I'm going to change the distance between my characters, noise that a bit. Doesn't have any much influence because we're going to relay out those afterwards. I don't want to have any green guys here, so I'm going to remove the green guys by going into the entity types panel. Here I can see the 2 types I'm having in my scene, the green guys, the blue guys. So I'll turn off the green, so I don't have any green at all, but you can always, control how many you want. You can even paint that data. We've got a paint tool to enabling this. So, okay, and if you don't, if you're not able to make this work, just create a grid pop tool. We don't really care. I just wanted to use another mode, but just use the casual stuff, which was working for you in the beginning. So just delete the previous pop tool and create a grid, and that'll be fine. We'll figure that later. What was the error? So just create a grid stuff the same way than before, knowing that you go here, click anywhere, and put as many characters as you want. Okay, and finally, when you've got that pop tool, make sure to go into new here, new particle system, new crowd field to create a different simulation, a separate simulation. So I'm just creating a separate simulation because I want to handle those guys differently. It's not mandatory. I could have kept them, in the same pop tool, but that would just have been more complex to handle. I would have to make a branch for one character, another branch for another character. So it's just my way of working, but maybe another experienced CrowdTD will go another way. So really up to you here. But I just like to keep things proper and separated so we can tell that maybe this is validated by my supervisor. And now he wants me to add some flags. So I don't want to touch this. So I kind of put it away. And now I start something new. So I just creating another simulation and make some flags, and I handle those later. So I'll go within particle system, new crowd field, and now you've got your new characters. But you're probably going to tell me, okay, we want to make close simulation and flags, but those guys aren't wearing any flags, right? So let's check. What do we have? So we can open the character maker to check what kind of assets are available on those characters. And if we want to, so we can go, open the character maker, open a file. So the file we're using, the casual man light. So that's one way. But if you don't want to really locate that file, you can also go into your entity type. If it's too, okay, the UI works well. You may notice that on your entity type next to the file here, so casual man light GCHA into the attributes, you've got an icon, which is a gray window with an orange arrow. If you click on this here, that will open the character maker with your character in it. So let's open the character so we can check how does the skeleton looks like. So this is the skeleton of my character. So far, so good. We don't really pay too much attention to this. So what we want to see if are there some flags being available onto those characters. So I go into geometry and see what's available here. So my characters, they got a group which is called hair, undercoat, pants, shoes, bodies, and here we go. There's a flag group. So within that flag group, there's a flag, and then there's a flag group stuff, which has the stick mesh and a close mesh and an empty choice. So we've seen yesterday that as soon as that icon here is clicked, it means that my characters, they get assigned with a variation, which is either that one here or that one there. And the way you control the variation is going to be into the rendering types. So, okay, my character have flags, but for some reason, they're not displayed right now within the viewport. So the reason is because here we've got a type being available, crowdman light. And if we pay attention to the flag group, we can see that my flag group is set to 0. So it means my character will have 0% of chance to have a flag. So it looks like the characters I'm having in my scene maybe belong to that type here. And if I check another rendering type we've been creating, but you can create as many as you want, remember, there's one which is called crowdman light flag. And if we pay attention here, we can see that the flag group now has 100% of chance to having a flag. So what I'd like to do apparently is to apply that type here, that rendering type, to my blue characters. So we can close this. Now we know that there's a flag which exists and we can take advantage of. We can close that window and we can go into our flag man character type. And you remember yesterday, we'll notice that you can control how you assign the rendering types to the characters. So here we can jump into the attributes of that flag man character. If we check the rendering attributes, we can see that the guy, they're assigned by default with a type called crowdman light, which is the first one of the list. We always assign the first type we can find into our scene. So that's the default behavior of the software. But from the list, you can also pick another type, which is crowdman light underscore flag. And if you press the plus button next to it, you'll assign that rendering assignment, that rendering weights to those characters only, to the blue characters only. And if you want to have all of them wearing a flag, you can just put that slider down to 0. So 100% of the blue character will be assigned with crowdman light underscore flag, which is the weighting system, which has flag all along. And if I rewind the simulation and I now play first frames, we'll see that now characters get assigned with some flag geometry here. So that's exactly what we needed. So let me go through this again, maybe. Let's go back into the actual state. So I think The actual state is something like this, where characters don't have any flag, but we know that when we made the characters that we create a variation, which is called crowdman underscore flag, crowdman light underscore flag. So this exists into the character file. It has some weighting, and this is exactly the weighting we want to apply. So what we need to do is find the type we need to assign that weighting to. Go into the rendering attributes, figure where the type is, add it, and set the weight properly. So 100% of my guys, now they've got a flag. Excellent. So far, so good. So this character here has been prepared for close simulation. So for now, I'll just show you how you benefit from this. And slightly after, I'll show you how you can paint your own close stuff, your own close properties. If for some reason the plus, well, I think when you click plus, something happens, but it's probably an error. So if something happens like an error, maybe check the script editor. Also maybe refresh the interface by selecting another node and going back to the previous node. Sometimes the UI doesn't refresh properly for some reasons, depending on the version of Maya. If that doesn't work on your side, maybe there's an error in the script editor and probably we'll have to check later. Make sure you don't have named two nodes the same way, that all your nodes are nicely separated in terms of names, because that can provide some conflicts. But just else refresh the UI by selecting another node and re-clicking the same node to see if that changes something. Else you can just follow the rest of the session like this. Okay, so we've been preparing that flag for you. One way to check if a flag is ready to make close simulation is we can go back into the character maker. And you don't necessarily have to follow or make this on your side. I just want to show you what's the ID behind it. And let's bring my asset properties back. So when a mesh has some close attributes, when you select it, so this is my close flag mesh. So this is that part here of the close. This is what composed the actual flag of it. You can see it has, we've got on every single mesh, we've got something called close asset file. So this is where how much close is able to stretch, and so on and so forth. So this is where we store all the physics attribute of the close. And we store that into a specific file because we're using an external solutions to do this. We're using an NVIDIA plugin, which is called PhysX. And when a mesh has some close properties, you can see that now it references a file. So here, my character here reference an APX file, which stands for Apex, which is one of the PhysX NVIDIA plugin file format. And this is where we're going to read that information from. So something which is really important is you cannot have that tab here being opened and do a close simulation at the same time because of the NVIDIA dependencies. So you really need to close that tab. And it's super, super important. Else you get an error message saying that you need to close that tab elsewhere. So there's no way to miss this. So you need to close that tab. And now the environment is clean. We don't have anything which relates to NVIDIA, and we can apply some close simulation. So keep in mind that for the flag close, we've been already painting some properties on it, so it's ready to use. And right after, I'll show you how you make it ready. So let's go into the behaviors now, because having a close being simulated on your characters belongs to the behaviors. So if we make it a behavior, it allows us to start that behavior when we need it and stop it when we don't need it anymore. So it can be a really great way to only have close when the camera is looking at a part of the crowd. That is to say, you do a stadium, it's really useless to simulate the close for everybody if you're just looking at one part of the stadium. So you can enable that behavior or stop that behavior when you actually need it. So what I'll just do is I'll go into the behavior editor and I'll go into my new type here, my flagman car shape, which is empty. We haven't assigned any behavior yet. And now we're going to play with a new behavior we haven't seen yet, which is the close behavior. So we've got two close behavior. Yesterday, someone was asking, can we use enclose? So the answer is yes, but obviously as soon as you got hundreds of characters in your scene, it's going to be a pain. So we prefer and we advise people to use the Apex PhysX NVIDIA Close, which is GPU accelerated, which multi-threads well, which runs super fast, which runs like hundreds of times faster than enclose. So we're going to use that behavior instead of the enclose one. And moreover, we haven't made any enclose setup here into our scene. So I'm going to drag and drop the APX close behavior. I'm going to assign it to my flow the same way than before. So now it becomes active. The default trigger is set up to start. The stopping trigger is set up to false. Probably it's a good time to save also as well, as it's been a while. And the interface is pretty small and minimal. It's only one thing we need to specify is which mesh of the characters we want to use for close simulation. And here we have to write the name of a mesh, but we've got a helper button here. So I can open the helper, and that helper gives me the list of all meshes of my character. And amongst all the others, it figures that there's one mesh which in the character file already has some close settings. So we can select that mesh here, assign it here. And if we rewind the simulation and play the simulation, now I've got all my flags going, being attracted by gravity and now falling onto my characters. And I can also probably provide like some wind velocity if I want to see my, maybe more than this. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly what's the unit of this, but anyway, we're going to add some, some wind. It's not the right direction here. But now you've got some close simulation. I'm running, I'm not sure, I'm running 110 characters and I'm still real time. So if you got any error, check the script editor and check all the errors. I think the error you all having is the one I kind of stress, is that I think you've got an error saying that the character file is actually open. So let's say here you forgot to close that tab in the character maker like I specified. When I run the simulation, I've got an error. So you want to go into the script editor and read everything. So the last error says, okay, something is incorrect. A child behavior has raised an error. You can go above, and above it tells you, Apex close simulation can't run properly. Please close all tabs in the character maker before launching the simulation. So before something happens, before like worrying like there's an error, check the script editor. Check here, as I said, also when you got an error, select your behavior because it's going to be written here. So check yourself because we are super verbose. No, we've got plenty of customers and we don't have the time to answer all the error messages they get when they do error uses. So we always provide the reason why there's an error. So always make sure that you read those and you check those, before worrying that something is wrong. So Apex close simulation can't run properly. Please close all tabs in the character maker before launching simulation. So, okay, let's go into the character maker. Please close all tabs. I had one. Now I can close that tab and run the sim. And now I'm having my flag simulation. So let's put maybe the wind into the right direction. So it's x-axis. So here we want to put some wind on, let's put a 0 here. And we want to put it on -z, -100. So it will float into the wind. And here we go. And here I've got, as I said, let's go with full frame rate to see how fast it goes. Okay, not so much, but still I have got 100 characters here with full close simulation, still running real time. So super efficient, way more efficient than enclose, and this is really the takeaway here. So let's remove the wind, and what we want to do is probably provide an animation. You're bluffing. I still have the error even through all the tabs are closed. Really make sure, and you need to rewind the simulation. The error message says, close all the tab, rewind the sim, play the sim once again. And if you still have the error, best will be to send this to support so we can check this. But really make sure that everything is closed here. You need to have, oops, sorry. No, it's the right stuff. You need to have load the character file, blah, 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 panel here in the middle, which tells you that really it's closed. And you need to rewind the sim and relaunch the sim from scratch to make sure that you're applying the right stuff. Anyway, that's just, as soon as you went through the rest of the stadium stuff, you can just follow and not having to especially doing that yourself at the same time. Great. So let's apply maybe a motion to these characters because we want that flag to, maybe be raised and move above the characters. So we're going to assign a motion behavior to those guys. So right now they're just playing a close. So let's bring a motion behavior, and where do I put this? So I want to play a motion, and I want the close to be simulated at the same time. So some people are saying parallel after the close. Parallel, it looks like the parallel operator is getting the more voices, and that's the correct answer. So remember, behaviors, they're not switched. They're not like, okay, I enable the behavior, I can move away from it. As soon as you move away from a behavior, it doesn't apply anything into your simulation. So if you want to have both the close at the same time than a motion, you need to use the parallel operator. The parallel operator tells you those two motions play at the same time. And when it's a close and when it's a motion, there's no conflict between it. They're gonna like collaborate. The motion will provide some inertia. The physics system and the close will follow that inertia system. So the way to put this in parallel is to just drag and dropping the behavior on the same spot. And when you release it, it will create the parallel operator. So there's one question which is asking, why not before? So the thing is, if you put the motion before, what will happen is, first you play a motion. So we've got posterior animation. At some point you stop it because you need to go after. So you need to really see this as kind of like an circuit board or electricity circuits. Like electricity goes through, flow from left to right, goes from here. While it's here, it runs that behavior. When it's out, that behavior doesn't run anymore. Then it goes to the next. It's not like a influence graph. It's more like an execution graph. So this is why it's kind of hard to handle. It's really unique in all the node graph representation. This is really like, when it's on, it runs. When it's off, it doesn't run anymore. So like electricity moving, and if you put it before, you'll have motions before, and then you got physics. Yeah, I know it's a bit tricky. So this is why I really want to stress this out, and this is why we're spending a lot of time within the behavior editor. We had a different approach from the beginning. So yeah, I agreed that it may be misleading. So this is why I want to have that analogy with circuit boards, electricity. So you really want to make your mind around that new paradigm, I guess. So yeah, we want to have the two behaviors running at the same time. So the thing is, we're going to put them in parallel. So when the signal starts, it goes there. The signal is going to spread and scattered in two directions, and it will run those two behaviors at the same time. And there's one thing missing. I need to put a motion file here. So I'm going to take a file, which is into my audience package. I can take the stand rising arm animation. I think it's an arm with the guy standing and rising his arms like this. So it probably will be like a good animation for my flag. So I'm gonna just grab any motion clip, but here I've been picking the stand rising arm animation. And I think I'm good. I'm gonna rename that motion again. Rising arm. And here we go. And let's see how that goes. So now we've got a motion, which is, yeah, I'm more than free. I'm more than real time. So this is why the characters are going so fast. Up. Let's go back to playback speed, max real time. Okay. It's still a bit like aggressive. We can see that that motion has not been made for a flag simulation. So we can probably slow it down. The same stuff than before. We can probably like change the start frame so they all have they all wave at a different time, and probably slow that motion down so we don't have that crazy flag animation, which is really non-believable. So you guys already know how to do this. Change the start frame, go into the speed ratio, and here I probably like slow it down way more than what I should, but I don't have any other animations. Yay, that's better. And I have a more accurate, realistic, I say flag simulation. And actually, it's running way more than real time. The thing is, I had to relaunch the simulation to see what was going on, but that runs at 41 FPS on my computer, 110 characters with close running at 41 FPS. I'm not sure you can get this with Vellum. Great. Okay, so we've got two simulations in our scene. We've got the Mexican wave guys and we've got our flag guys. Is there anything we should do before going into rendering and layouting that crowd? I'm kind of happy with that, to be honest. So maybe let's move forward. It's yeah, okay, it's 3 hours we've been running this, so we will have 1 hour to go through layouting and rendering, so it will be more than enough. And maybe also I'll take some time to show you how to add. Oh, yeah, sorry, true. I wanted to do that. I wanted to show you how to add a flag. So no need to follow this right now. So I'm gonna save the scene on my side. No need to make it on your side. I just want to show you how you make a flag from scratch, right? And the thing is, you need a separate plugin to do this. So this is why we're not gonna do this together. But that will be the idea, and we cover this into some tutorials, so you get plenty of helps if you want to cover this yourself. So I'll just go into a new scene, but keep your scene open for now. Keep your stadium scene, save it, by the way, and that'll just be me talking for maybe 2-3 minutes just to show you how you set up a close here. So what I'll do is I'll start by loading my assets, like just my Maya geometry here. So I'm gonna grab it from the shaders directory. This is where we've been seeing that we can bring the character. Great, and on that mesh here, I want to create a close simulation. So I want to paint some attributes, I want to define some physics properties, so on and so forth. So what I'll do is I'm gonna use a plugin which is called PhysX. So it's already installed. Notice that actually it's been deprecated by NVIDIA, that plugin, but they were kind enough to provide us the source code. And from now on, we are maintaining and compiling that plugin and updating for the newest version of Maya. So you can grab it on the same place where you've been grabbing the Golaem software. And we've been compiling it. Before it was only running on Windows, and we've been compiling it for Linux as well. So it's available on all platforms we support, on any Maya version that we support. And now we're maintaining the plugin ourselves, and so you can still benefit from close being physically and GPU accelerated. So I'm gonna load that plugin here. Great. And I end up with a new shelf, and from that shelf I can create plenty of physics simulations for ragdolls and so on. But what I want to do is create a close. So with that mesh selected, I'm gonna create a clothing. It's gonna create for me a new node in the scene. And also remember, the same way that within Golem you've got a unit system, when you do simulation, you always have to make sure that you select the right unit. So here within the physics plugin, it's within the rigid solver node. And I want to go into that node, and what I want to change is the gravity amount. So they decided to go another way. Rather than having a drop down where you provide your units, here you have to multiply this yourself. So they consider that the default unit in physics, because probably they're American, is centimeters, because most studio in the US work in centimeters from my experience. Once again, it depends on project, on CTOs, and personal stories. Whereas, in France, we've started working with French studio, and most of the first studio we've been working with were working in meters, so we didn't even know that there was another way of working. So every software fancies his own way to create his own units. So make sure you set up the right unit. Here my characters is in meters, and the default unit is centimeters. So I need to divide this by 100. So I'm gonna put, instead of 981, I'm gonna put 9.81. So now it's, and this is the gravity. So this is what is applied, the scale of the gravity, which gets applied to your clothes. And if I want to have a close simulation on that character, there's at least one thing I need to set, which is the maximum distance of deformation for each vertex. So for each vertex, you want to tell how far you are able to go from your source position, how far in that direction and how far in that direction here. So that's the data that you're going to paint. And this is where you're going to specify where you do put your constraint, where the cloth is fully attached to the skinning and where it's fully simulated. So I'm gonna go into my clothing node here. I'm gonna paint a max distance. So let's see how it looks like. So it's not so bad. So I paint this on a per vertex value. There's a way to display the textures, but I'm not really sure why it went into wireframe. Never mind. So I'm not going to paint any maximum distance on those vertices here because those are the ones which will be attached to the characters. So I try to cover everything. Would be great if I had the texture being applied, but for some, okay, that's because my normals, I reverse on that mesh here, but okay, now I can paint this. Well, I'm already, wow, you can do that way better than me, and you can put gradients, you can smooth that out. It's a paint tool, so it's fully available. And you can go back to the start frame, like in any simulation software, and you can run your simulation and see how does the clothes behave. So you can run it, and probably will be great to apply an animation on that character to see how does that postures get applied to. But okay, so far so good. Looks like something I like. Then I have all the physics properties I can change. I can change the bending resistance, the friction with when it collides with my ground here or with something else, how much it's gonna attach to that surface. So you can change this. You can scale up and down the gravity. You can change the damping. So you make your clothes, oops, I need to use those controls here. You can use the damping, and you can see the damping like make your clothes really rigid. And rather than if you put it to 0, you've got something more like a silk kind of cloth. Same goes with the friction. If I put 0 friction, it will be really like silk. And if I put high friction, it will be more like, I guess, t-shirt fabric, cotton. So here, clothes artists, they're better than me to master those parameters. But what you do is you just change those until you reach something that you like. Put some keyframes on the character to see how the character reacts and clothes reacts in real conditions. There are plenty of attributes you can send. Obviously it's not as advanced as a real clothes system, but it's damn pretty good enough for crowds. That even crowds which are like a secondary plan. We've got some really awesome shots on the movie is called Nutcracker. I'll probably show you a quick example of it. It was made by Audio FX. By the way, David, who's the crowd department supervisor, is on the Discord also helping out. And they were using the APX clothes for every single character they had. Even major hero characters, they turned everybody into crowds because the system was so fast to compute rather than using a dedicated close system, and they didn't have the time to go through that. So really fancy way to have fast close. And when you're happy with that, you just have to export that close as an APX file, which is exactly the same file we provided into Golem when we were defining our system. So I can just go into export selection here. I can go into Apex physics mode, and I can say I want to export physics assets. The output unit is centimeters here. We cover this into a tutorial. We make plenty of videos around every single parameters, how to export, how to import, how to take care about the unit. So you're fully covered if you want to make your own cloud stuff. And I can just export that flag here, and now I have an APX file with all the properties I can bring into Golem and have my code simulation that I had before. So as easy as this, right? And just to make my point, if I can figure that, give me a second. I want to hide that floating controls. Here we go. Nutcracker. And I just want to show you the kind of quality you can get if you're, if you're a good artist, which is not me. So that's the shot, and that's the kind of characters they had. So they had 3 types of characters. They got the main character. You can see that geometry variation. They got and every single character has at least 1 or 2 pieces of simulated clothes. This is the woman type of characters here with all the geometry variation, and this is the kids. And you can see all those dresses, movements. So this is the breakdown of the shot of Nutcracker. And every single character has clothes, and this is what you can get with the PhysX plugin. If you take some time, changing those parameters and making them fit your requirements. Great. So that was just a quick stuff about the clothes. Once again, the PhysX plugin, just go into our tutorials. It explains how to install it, how to run it, how to use it, how to export, how to bring into Golem. So we'll not go into too much detail here, but I just wanted to show you how fast it is to configure your crowd. So let's go back to my Stadium. That was the end of my parenthesis. And you know what, before we jump into rendering, probably yesterday we haven't made any break during the second session, but it would be great to make one now. So it's 9:08. So let's say just a 5-minute break so I can get my glass empty, full, and see you at 9:15, right? See you in a minute. Okay. Should we end with this? Tac. So let's lay out and render that crowd. So let's see the state I'm in. Great. If I create an Arnold light and I create, well, I've got my ground geometry. If I render, what happens is I don't have my crowd. Where are they? Anything I missed? Je me fais engueuler. Lost in the non-cache. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, true. You need to cache a crowd if you want to be able to render those guys. So let's open the simulation exporter and we're going to cache a crowds. So something different than yesterday is that we've got now two simulations. So we've got that one here, which is disabled for now, and we've got that one here, which is enabled. So what we'll do is we're going to export the two of them. So as soon as you select those two, we're going to create one series of file for the first simulation, one series of file for the second simulation. So let's enable back the first simulation. So we're going to export the two of those in the same pass. So I go back into my Golaem population group. I'll go into my first crowd field that I disabled before, and I'm going to enable that. If you don't enable it, even if you ask to export, it will just skip it. So select the two caches, select the frames you want to export from. So here my idea is I want to make quite long cache. If I was in the production context, I would make quite long caches because I'm gonna like lay out those, time shuffle those, and be able to manipulate time and time shift. So I usually have more frames than what I need. If the shot is 100 frames, I'm probably gonna export 300, 400, just to have a high range of possibilities when I'm going to do the layout and the rendering of my crowd. So let's say here we're going to export. I'm not going to export 1000 frame. It will take a couple of seconds. So let's go maybe with 400 frames. It will be good. Please select the directory you'd like to export from, save the scene before, and let's export this. So what's going to happen is we're going to export and write the postures of the characters into the cache, run the behaviors, see how they behave, and write this into a cache. And when it's done, the same as before, it will the software would turn into cache replay mode, and here we'll be able to render and actually change and lay out the crowds. And we're going to take the final half an hour to do this. So obviously, as soon as there's a close simulation in your scene, writing a cache is longer because in addition to just the bone position and orientation, this is what we had before. So super small footprint data. Now we need to write displacement cache for the actual vertices of the flag for every frame, for every character. So this is why the cache are going to be bigger when you have a close on it. Great. Once it's exported, let's go back here. Now I can move freely in the time. I can see my clothes. I can see both my crowds in the background, in the foreground. And now if I render, I should get my crowd. If you want to stop the export during the process, you can just press escape. The process is fully, like most long processes within Golem, you can skip it by using escape, and that will just stop where it is. The frames are exported sequentially. So if you stop at frame 100, it means that you've got the previous frame being available. The software will still go into cache replay mode, but you'll just be able to see the first 100 frames. And now let's render this, and hopefully I should get my front simulation with the clothes, my back simulation with the static people. So I've got 500 characters being rendered in 6 seconds, even with close simulation. So that's pretty neat. Just checking how many of you guys got this rendered properly. Yeah, everything is orange, obviously. Sorry, you've got the learning edition. I don't have it anymore in my scene because guess what? I'm having a commercial Golem license. Lucky me. But okay, I see for some people are still waiting for the export to be done. So let me go through what I've been doing again. So I was in simulation mode where I had my simulation. If I want to export my characters, I need to use that icon here into the shelf. So it's the one which is between two separators. Also, you got the same option, by the way, from the Golem menu. If you don't want to learn every single icon, you can go into the Golem menu, and at the end you've got the simulation exporter. And from that simulation exporter, you're going to select the start frame and the end frame. You usually try to put more than one you need. Say that you want to export to the above simulation, check that the default directory it's going to export on. It's fine. And then export. It will run the simulation for you, bag the simulation result into a cache. And at the end, it will turn into a cache replay mode, and you can change freely the time, and you can render, and obviously you should get some learning edition watermarks there. Okay, so far so good. So now let's say we'd like to lay out that crowd. We need to bring this into another scene which has the stadium geometry in it, and we want to blend people with flags with those people here in the background. So how do we do that, and how do we make this proper? So what I'll do is I'm gonna first save my two simulation in our simulation library. So if you've got maybe just a quick word about rendering, if you got rendering errors, first thing to check is the render checker. So use that button here. It will tell you if maybe you missed anything. Here I'm using Arnold 4.2. We kind of spoke like extensively yesterday about which version is supported, not supported. So make sure that your version is supported. Notice that contrary to what we are saying on the website and from that box, Arnold 4.0.0, it's a buggy version. Nobody uses it in production, to be honest, but it's installed by default with 2018. So we figured that some of you guys may have it on their personal computers. Please update to at least 4.0.1 or anything else which is coming after that version. Don't use 4.0.0, it's the devil. And if you're having another rendering engine and you're not sure which one we're supporting, refer to the release notes. So we covered this yesterday already. But if you have any issues regarding rendering, it's usually because your rendering engine is not supported. So check what's supported and how to update. So I was saying, yes, we want to put those into the library so we can bring anytime we need to have, a new stadium preset. Here we made a really nice simulation with stadiums, and anytime we need to have stadium stuff, it's ready, and we want to use those stuff even if the stadium is different, even if maybe the scenario is different. We want to use those presets every time a new stadium comes our way. So I'm going to open the library tool, which is here. It's one of the last tool here. It's the one which has 6 squared into it. One of the 6 squared is orange. It's almost at the end of the shelf next to a separator. And when you put your mouse on top of it, you've got a simulation cache library icon coming your way. So this is where you'll be able to store some presets of your crowds. So you can see I already made some presets with my previous tests. But what I can do is maybe create just a new file, and or you start from the default file that you have. And what I'll do is I want to make a really nice view of my crowd. First of my blue guys here. So let's aim them properly because we're going to make a screenshot of those. and I'm going to use the last button of the library to import the current cache into my library. So I'm going to click this. It's making a preset out of it. So I'll let you do that. Let me restart this from scratch, and let's close this. So what I want to do is I want to save this as a preset. I really like that simulation and I want to use it later. Or maybe I want to give this maybe the job of the crowd TD, depending on your studio organization. The job of the crowd TD is done. And usually here, lighters and layout artists take over. It really depends what kind of organization you have, but in some places, this is how it looks. So it's just a way to pass your caches with all the parameters and everything you've been setting to lighting artists who doesn't know anything about Golaem, and they can just have a library, see how does the cache looks like, and bring that in anytime they need to have it, right? So let's open the library. You open it from that tool here. Here I'm already having a library stuff, so I'm just going to create a new one, which I'm going to name Academy. So let's put this maybe here. And what I'll do is I want to really make a nice view of that cache here and click on the last button of the menu of the simulation cache library, which is named import from selected, and it will create a snapshot of it, right? So something that right now, something which is not taken into account is if you check out the entities count, it tells me that I'm having 1,700 characters. And here it's quite clear that I'm not having 1,700 characters. So the thing is here, as all my crowds has been exported at the same time within the same pass, right now it considers that what I want to save is the full crowd stuff. So it's not exactly what we need. So what we'll do is we're just going to edit that entry. So this is my vignette here. And if I click on it, it's going to import it in my scene. So don't click on it. So I can just edit the vignette, and I'm going to change just one attribute here. So we can see the name of the item is correct, is the name of my scene. The name of the node it's taken into account is correct. And here you can see it registered my two simulation, simulation 1, simulation 2. Here, what I would just want to have is just my simulation 1. So what I'll do is I'll just remove my simulation 1 here from that field. I'm going to remove also the separator sign. I'm not sure, semicolon. I guess that's the word. So here I just register my second simulation, which is only the flag. So the first one was my stadium casual guys. The second part is my flag guys. And if I press OK, okay, it doesn't update. It should update, but it doesn't update. Apply. Okay, let's. Okay, well, it's bug report for me. Thought it was updating. It's not, and that's my code, so I definitely have to fix this. And you can save, by the way, just save the file. So now you're saving your presets. And let's make it another preset here. So let's zoom now on the stadium crowds guy, the casual crowd, and let's make another preset. So from the same button, click again. And now we're making another view. And the same way we've been removing the first simulation from the second, we're going to remove the second simulation from the first. So we're going to remove crowd field 2 and apply, okay, whatever, and save. So you should have now two presets. So let me maybe redo that in case that was not clear for some of you guys. So I want to save my presets here so I can move along and go into layout and rendering and lay out that crowd into a different stadium. So I'm going to make first zoom into my flag characters, open the simulation cache, make a vignette out of it. So I'm creating a new preset. Here it's registering all my characters. So it's registering my two simulations. This is the default behavior there. So I'm going to edit my item here and say, okay, I just want to register the second simulation. So let's remove the first simulation here. Apply, okay. Let's zoom on the others. and import, make a new preset and remove the second simulation out of it. It's not a big deal if you don't manage to do that on your side. That's just, I just want to show you what's the workflow. When you're CrowdTD and you need to pass that cache to someone else, this is usually the right tool to use because it's saving the presets easily for you. You don't have to make any pipeline tool around it. But if you want to make pipeline tools around it, there's callbacks everywhere. All fine. So let's save this. Let's make sure you save that file, and let's make sure we save that Maya file. And now we can go into a completely new scene. So let's jump into that new scene, and let's say you make your simulation with all your behaviors, with all your triggers. You're super happy with that. You exported this, and now it's time to bring it on your actual stadium stuff. So let's maybe like redo a stadium geometry quickly. So I'm gonna, I don't know, make a bigger stadium, I guess. And this is the actual real layout we're going to use. This is your actual real stadium geometry you're going to use for your shot. So there's some artists who worked on it. In the meantime, you were working on your home stuff with the crowds. And at the end, you just make the two converge. And this is where you're going to like really lay out those properly into your environment. So I'm going to make my stadium here, probably, well, I'll not spend too much time on this, but you'll get the idea, something like this. Now is a good time to make your rounds and, you know, everything fancy regarding your characters. So let's say this is now my new ground for my new terrain, for my new crowd, and this is why I need to bring my crowds in. So while I have my crowds, in the right way to bring them in is to either click on any of those, and anytime you're going to click on those, it's going to import that crowd presets into your scene, already baked, already exported, so you can have it and lay out it wherever you want to. So I'm going to click on Stadium Bench, and remember that at frame 1, the characters, they're not here, they don't exist. You have to go through after frame 1, and now you're having your simulation. Okay, I don't have flags yet. I'll probably set my flags later. Yep, I can see your message, Alex. 3 different people lose textures. What does losing textures mean when saving library presets? What does that losing textures mean? Does it mean it goes in another color? It means the color, the characters disappear. No textures on people on the vignettes. Okay. Okay, that's a good one. I'm not sure exactly. So what we're doing when we made when we do the screenshot, we're using the Playblast tool from Maya. So maybe you've got an option in your Playblast tool that you changed. So, you know, we're using Maya Playblast options. So maybe there's one option here which has been set. I'm not a big expert. I think not a big deal, to be honest. But check if the script, if you got any error in the script editor, maybe let us know and we can take a look into this, but we haven't heard about this before. And also maybe provide us with the Maya version. A couple of questions went my way. If we bake something with the PLE license, we'll still have watermarks when you use it with the commercial license. Yes, correct. Else people will just, you know, do simulation for years and rent a Golem for 1 week, and we would be starving and poor and couldn't pay for the rent. Isn't it a problem you can't make separate cache when you already have a cache in the scene? I'm not really sure I understand that question. Isn't it a problem you can't make separate cache when you already have a cache in the scene? Okay, you mean in my scene I had before, I could have separated them if I exported them in 2 different passes. Usually here, I just wanted to have 2 caches because I wanted to show you what's behind the hood, but nobody does that, or just in really exceptional cases, but I wanted you to understand what's going on behind. Most of the time people just export it within the same cache and just after that lay out their crowds. Here I'm going to import the 2 caches anyway in my scene, so it's the same than having just 1 vignette, bringing 1 vignette. So I just wanted to show you what's behind that, but nothing much. In the vignette, the shader is the one we see on enable color visual feedback. Okay, that's indeed weird that the textures, maybe there's a problem with the vertex shader. Let's keep that. If it's like a critical problem, please send an email to the support form, and we'll see how we can move forward with this. But anyway, I just want to cover, we've got like 20 minutes to try to cover the end. So here, what we did is we're just importing our cache, and we'll now get a crowd in our scene. It's not shaded because I don't have the shaders anymore in my scene. So the idea is I'm going to lay out my crowd so it fits to that bench here. So I've got multiple ways of layouting the crowd. Either I can select a patch like I did yesterday. I was going, F9, selecting a couple of a bunch of characters, F9. Okay, like you can select characters, place them, but you can feel it's going to be a pain, right? To move each character separately to put them into the right positions. So we got some more fancy tools when you do stadium stuff, and I'll try to quickly show you those tools there. So what we need to do first is we're going to create another pop tool. So remember from the beginning, we'll be creating pop tools to place characters. Now in our stadium, we're going to create a pop tool which will be used as standing points for the crowd. So it would allow us to select a bunch of characters and scatter them onto our pop tools, new pop tool slots. So the same than before, you create your pop tool any way you want to, the way you really want to have your characters to fit into that environment. So I don't know, I just create like the zone one. My positions, they're fully orange, they're not assigned to a character, not a problem. I'm gonna say, hey, I want to have, I don't know, 10,000 characters. Can I put 10,000 characters into this? No, I can't. I got 4,000, which is okay, I guess. Let's change the distance here, noise that a bit. So let's say this is going to be my final layout I'd like to assign my characters on. So what I'll do is I'm going to apply some layout modification. So now is a good time to maybe save your scene. Save the scene as, and now it's my stadium layout for render. Great. Save your layout file, whatever. And we're gonna open the layout tool. So I think we haven't opened it yet. And I understood that some people tried to open it yesterday and it didn't work. So let's see if that's a success on most of you. So the layer tool is right after the exporter. You've got, well, not exactly right after, but slightly after the exporter. It is a walking characters with 3 layers next to it, stacked on top of each other, which represent the layer you can stack, the deformation you can stack on your characters. And the above layer is blue. And if you put your mouse upon it, it tells it's a simulation cache layout tool to edit or view a simulation cache layout. So let's open it. It should open a window which looks like this. Let me know if that works on your side, you guys. Because apparently on like brand new vanilla Maya, sometimes it could not work. Okay, I've got at least one yes, a second one, all good. Okay, and probably the rest of you guys are getting tired. I'm getting tired too. Yes, working. Okay, that's great. That's awesome. So that I was like, that was the part I was kind of worried about. But okay, so far so good. Great. We haven't played with that tool even if it's my favorite tool, to be honest. I know we're always like showing the simulation because you need to simulate stuff always at the beginning. And we tend not to have enough time to speak about the layout, but I'm glad that every single day we're going to use that tool to show you what it has in it. So the idea behind the layout tool is here. It's a stack of operations. So we're not into the behaviors and the graph of execution. Here it's a stack of stuff you're applying on top of it. And it's not entirely linear. It's fully nodal. So it means that sometimes you can branch and make some conditions. So the way it works is always the same. First, you need to select some characters, then you need to apply, and everything you're going to apply will be applied on the selection node, which is the more the well sorry which is the closest on the left. I just make a design to show you. Let's say we select, I don't know, 2-3 characters, we apply a translation to them, we apply an orientation to them, then we'll recreate another selection, we apply an expand, whatever. So in that graph here, the way you read this is every time you're having a gray node, so gray means selector, all the nodes which come after, before the next gray node comes, all those nodes will get applied on that guy here. So translation, rotation is applied on that selection here. Or you can have, or those selection if you got multiple selections. You can have also selection here. So now that rotation is applied on those guys, those guys, those guys. Translation is applied on those guys and those guys. The expand here is only applied on that selection. That selection could be similar to that one, we don't know, but that's just the way it works. That's just the way you read this. So let's clean that out. And so what we need to do is first bring a selection. So the selection is the second icon into the library. It's the square with the dot, les pointillés. I don't know what's the name for that. The dots. It's the dots one. You control that editor the same way than the others. You translate with the Alt middle mouse. You zoom in, zoom out. When you zoom out, the view changes. Dashes. Thank you. I knew that name. So yeah, let's bring a selector. And I didn't like, you may have noticed that yesterday I was selecting from the viewport. Here, what I want to do is to write an expression. You can write expressions into the selector. So one expression I can write is maybe one of the simplest one is a star. So star means I want to select everybody. And if you want to see the viewport being updated, you need to unselect the node, reselect the node. And when you select the node, you can see what's taken into account into that selector node here. So unselect it, unselect the characters, select it, select the characters. So now I'm selecting every single character here. And what I want to do, I want to apply a layout modification into those characters. I want to snap them. We've got the SnapTo layer standing character with a, I don't know, a magnet. I think it's a U-curved magnet here. What we'll do is either you double click on it. If you double click, it will just connect those two together for you. Or you can just drag and drop. And with the middle mouse, with the middle mouse works. Yes, with the middle mouse, you can connect each connector together. So here you can use the middle mouse, drag and drop the two connectors. And you may notice also that that blue color is changing. Every time you're adding a new node, you're having a new blue color being applied. So it's like the root node in the triggers. It tells you which part of the graph is evaluated. So you can make here again, you can make a really heavy graph, and you can evaluate just sub part of it. And the shortcuts, either you can right click and set as root, and the shortcut you can see is the keyboard key V for view. So when you select a node, press V, it changes which nodes gets evaluated. So what we want to evaluate is the SnapTo. And what we want to do, and that will be one of the final operations for today, is we want to snap that all selection to that population tool here we've been doing. So into the options here, we're going to the SnapTo target. We're going to check what's available into the different options, and we can see we've got the pop tool shape. And if we do this, now we've got characters being copied and pasted where the population tool is. And the really fancy part of it is that I can change, the distance between my character and the layout tool automatically adapts to it. And now you can lay out your crowd without having to, go for whatever options here. So they're not adapting to the ground, so we're gonna fix this a bit later. So let me show you once again how that works. Let's add a distance here. So let's remove all the nodes. So if we remove all the nodes, we've got a cache on the previous ground. So we have to fix ground adaptation. We have to fix placement of the characters. So what we do is, as always, we always need to bring a selection. So we're gonna select the first the creator selector up. Sorry, it comes clear on your side if you don't have anything into your viewport. So make a selector, it's empty. So you can either select it from the viewport, or you can write your own expressions. One expression to be able to select everybody, for example, is to use the star wide card. So I'm just going to write star here into the entities I want to select. I'll put a star. So if I unselect the node and reselect the node, I can see what's selected, and I can see every single character is actually selected. So we're going to say we want to take those guys and snap them onto the pop tool, which is behind. And we'll do ground adaptation a bit later. And I had after that a SnapTo layer, either at double click, and if I double click, it will take the blue node, connect to it, and becomes the new blue node. Or if you make it, drag and drop it, you can use the middle mouse to make the connection. And as soon as you connect the blue node to a new node, it will becomes automatically the new node, like within the trigger editor. The SnapTo needs to be changed in its option. So we need to, specify where we want to snap those characters. So we're going to check the entries here, and we're going to snap to that entity on the pop tool we just created. So now we'll take those characters here, get each of them and place them behind. And we've got also an option where we can say that we don't want to keep the source entities, because here we can see we still have my previous cache, not impact. So I can say, no, I don't want to keep the source entities. And now I've got my crowds being assigned only on the background. And if I got, a full stadiums with 80,000 slots, I just made a 1,000 simulation that can then just scatter all along onto my stadiums without having to, make really heavy simulations or take a lot of time to handle this. And if I want to bring my flags, that's the same way. You go into the simulation cache library, bring your flags in, make a pop tool, or go into that pop tool and select some positions and put your flags into this. We'll see if we got sometimes we may do it. I just want to show you how you make ground adaptation. The fact that before my characters had a different ground. So we want to update to that new ground. So what we can do to say that there's a different ground from my entities and I don't want you to go through that ground is to take that geometry we're having now and say that that geometry here is my new ground. So I want Golem to be aware about this. So it's not using exactly the same way than what we're using into simulation because it's a different workflow. So I'm going to select my stadium geometry here, and I'll select a node called the Cache Proxy Manager. So before we were playing with the Crowd Manager, which is handling everything related to simulation. That guy is handling everything which is related to layout. So we've got two contexts in Golem. We've got the simulation context, which is where the timeline is black. This is where you can assign behaviors to characters, assign triggers. And we've got the cache replay layout context, where the timeline is green, where you can lay out your characters, move them around, apply some layers on top. So here we're going to take that plane, take that Cache Proxy Manager. You can see it as so we select first the plane, then the proxy manager, and we're gonna we can see we've got some terrain attributes, and we've got something called destination terrain here, which is a field to actually fulfill to find a way. So we're gonna select the geometry, select the proxy manager, and say, okay, we've got the new destination terrain. The terrain before was different. Now this is the new terrain. So I'm going to click on the destination terrain. It's going to ask where you'd like to write that destination terrain. So I'm going to write it into my cache directory. And you may have noticed that now my character, they are adapted to that new ground. No more going through the geometry stuff. And they're now attached to that new ground. Oh, good, oh, great. So that was kind of everything I wanted to show you today. It's almost the time. So I'll see if, so first, let's make the poll if you're around. Oh, if you find this is sick, you haven't seen anything yet, because right now the characters, they're not even adapting to IKEA. Let's say if they walk and the ground is different than one you've been computed, and you find this sick when we're gonna tackle locomotion and layout ground adaptation with full IKEA control. So yeah, there's a poll which is coming your way, just to make sure that you know, you were able to follow everything. I didn't went too fast. I tried to slow down today. Maybe you noticed I took more time to repeat the stuff. I spoke also slower because I know I speak super fast. So let us know that if you were able to go through the different steps. That was the stadium session. With this, you're kind of armed for any stadium which will come your way, kind of. And if you want to know more about stadiums, we make a complete session of tutorials on our YouTube as well. You know, you can review, and it kind of show you exactly the same workflow, but maybe with more advanced options sometimes and somewhere. So let me check the poll. It's pretty great. I know that the layout, I went super fast at the end. It's always, you know, at the end of the session, we don't have the time to do stuff. 27,000 people, well done. If you render this, I want to put, yeah, if you guys manage to go, you know, that far and make a stadium, feel free to share your image in the Discord. We'll probably create a channel dedicated to Academy images. And, you know, from here, if I save my layout now, let's save it. I'm going to save my layout. It's my layout render, not a good name. And Arnold, put some light and render, and I should get my 4,000 entities being rendered into the scene here. So yeah, please share some image with us if you're able to reach that point. Please go on the Discord if you got any questions. Also, we'll put the YouTube sessions of today. They will come on our YouTube channel soon. And we send an email as soon as possible with the link to it. We'll probably send it on the Discord channel as well. So join us on the Discord channel. Please check errors on your side before, you know, asking for support. We always try to write those errors and figure what's wrong. And you can check into the documentation what went on. In the meantime, I guess, take care, stay safe. Monday, we're going to do locomotion. So if you figured that stadium was exciting, please stick to Monday, and especially Tuesday, where we're going to do physics, explosions, archery. We're going to be crazy on the Tuesday, and we're going to be crazy with behaviors as well. So yes, please check those, stick with us, and remember that, you know, at the end, there will be an assignment, and the one who wants to follow that assignment will be really happy to recommend you, because there are plenty and plenty of positions, open positions right now worldwide. So if you enjoyed being a future crowd TD, let us know. Connect with us maybe on LinkedIn as well, because we post job offers on a really weekly basis right now. So yeah, let's know. Hope you enjoyed that session. I'm glad that most of you were able to go through. We are more than 100 people tonight. So that's awesome. That's really big number for such a small software. So yeah, thanks a lot for sticking. I know 4 hours is a long time, but I hope you enjoyed that. I think we're good. Alexandre, we're good? Yep, great. So yeah, we even finished earlier tonight, but I think it's for the best, right? I'm getting tired, to be honest. You guys take care. Thanks a lot, everybody, for sticking out. And see you on Monday. Have a great weekend. We're going to send licenses as soon as we can. We're going to wait for everybody to put their MAC addresses. during the weekend. And on Monday, when we're going to start the session, I'll show you how to install the license on your side, and you'll have a couple of days to get started. And that's something which has been written into the Discord. But if after the session, if after the academy and the license, you make your own shots, we'll be happy unlocking the watermarks for on each of them, so you can add them into your demo reel and promote your work without that dirty orange watermark. So we'll be able, even when the commercial license will run out, we'll be able to unlock your scenes. So yeah, don't feel stopped by that license system. Hey, Steven. There's a lot of familiar names, so I'm glad you guys were around. We'll talk about crowd demo reels. I should probably invite an HR people. They're probably they're you know what? Every day we're getting some emails from HR people asking us how does the academy session goes. Are there some people who look interested, and can we recommend some people to them? So maybe I can invite one of those HR people that will be really eager to see your names and chase you every day to get them into their studios. I'm not really good with that. I can totally share some reels that I like from friends of ours who have been at Crowd TV. Maybe we can invite one of those guys in the final sessions. But yeah, we'll be go on the Discord, remind that to me, and I'll be happy to post a couple of crowd reels I've seen recently. Great, that was enough talking for today. You guys stay safe. See you on Monday. Take care, and have a great weekend, I guess.